concerning wildlife is concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah, a rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting his front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson had been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich, don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham. It's a beautiful sunrise this morning, by the way. Absolutely lovely weather. It's cooled down quite a lot. Even in my little pied-à-terre here in London, it is not absolutely roasting. So I've been able to actually get a reasonably decent night's sleep. We've got lots to talk about this morning, of course. To wit, Prime Minister's questions yesterday. Unless you've been living under a rock, you will have seen that poor old Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, was not just crying, was not just whimpering, but was flat out sobbing all the way through. I mean, I think we all know how she feels, to be honest. I mean, I feel like sobbing every time I see Keir Starmer talking about anything. But she was literally looking like a woman who had the world on her shoulders. She looked like she hadn't slept for about 3 weeks. She was nodding her head enthusiastically to Keir Starmer's sort of perambulations as he was going on and on about how he'd managed to provide free school meals for loads of people and free breakfast clubs for loads of people, despite the fact that the welfare bill has completely and utterly collapsed around his ears. All sorts of speculation about what it could be. Nobody seems to know for sure. Downing Street making out that there's a personal issue which has made her upset. Other people suggesting that she'd had a row with the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle. Other people suggesting she's had a row with Angela Rayner. The general feeling is, you know, if you're Chancellor of the Exchequer of this great British nation of ours, you shouldn't really be going out front and centre in the middle of Prime Minister's questions and weeping, because it's not a very good look. And I'm afraid if you think that's not important, then look at what the markets did. The gilt slumped as the incident fueled investor nervousness over the public finances. 10-year yield pushing up 0.16 percentage points, the biggest one-day rise since the global bond market rout in April, and at one point the sharpest sell-off since Liz Truss's ill-fated 2022 mini-budget. That's what difference a few tears makes, and two-tier Keir took on a whole new meaning. But let's not forget, this is a man who thought it was a great idea to make the woman the first woman Chancellor ever. Have a look.
It will also be the first budget delivered by a woman ever. That is a moment of pride. When Rachel Reeves stands up, she will be making history. And I can tell you, young women and girls across the country will be watching, they will look up, and they will notice.
They certainly will notice. Past the Kleenex, I think, will be the first thing they'll be saying. She'll be a woman, the first woman Chancellor, a moment of pride. Yeah, it wasn't a moment of pride yesterday. It was a moment of horror for the entire front bench of the Labour Party. What is going on out there? 0344 499 1000. A lot of people saying, look, it could be a personal issue, in which case, you know, we should leave her alone. If it was that, then why was she sitting there, front and centre, of probably the most watched political programme of the week? It doesn't make any sense. And the whole situation looks to me as though Rachel Reeves has thoroughly had enough. And if she has had enough, you know, I wish her well. I don't think she's done a very good job. I don't think we should be any more sympathetic to her just because she was in tears. I think she's been a horrendous Chancellor, a horrendous choice by Keir Starmer. And to be honest, we wish they'd all go. They just all get lost. Thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. Chloe Dobbs is here. We're going to be talking to her about what's also going on. This is Morning Glory. And here we are. Chloe, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, what do you make of it all then? You know, first woman Chancellor does exactly what everyone thinks the first woman Chancellor will do when things get a bit rough. She bursts into tears.
I mean, this was one of the most remarkable PMQs ever. This will go down in history. I've never seen anything quite like it. Yeah. We were told that this was a personal matter afterwards, and I think most people are not buying that argument.
No.
If there was a personal matter, it is highly likely that either she would have been excused from PMQs, or before PMQs, at the very least, Kemi Badenoch would have been informed and she would have gone easy on her. Kemi Badenoch would not, if she'd been informed that there was a personal matter going on, had gone at Rachel Reeves saying she looks miserable the way that she did. I'm sure that Rachel Reeves was very, very stressed in the lead up to this, probably hasn't had a lot of sleep with this whole huge welfare rebellion going on, and this probably tipped her over
No, we heard this last week, that she spent most of last week in tears because, you know, the whole sort of Chancellor of the Exchequer's business was falling apart at the seams because she can't make ends meet. And the one sort of saving grace that she was going to have was this welfare bill, and she was going to go, well, we've managed to save $5 billion, all of which is all nebulous because they're not really saving $5 billion, they never would have done anyway. But when that all disappeared, I think she's under a massive amount of pressure, isn't she? Yeah,
I mean, she must be feeling absolutely hopeless after not being able to even save $5 billion on welfare, which is a drop in the ocean compared to the size of the bill. It's expected to reach potentially $100 billion by the end of the decade. And she's probably thinking, gosh, I really, really am going to have a very hard time if in the autumn I raise taxes again. I mean, we had a $40 billion tax raising budget, last year. And so she's thinking, well, I'm hopeless. There's nothing I can do to save money because the backbenchers just will not get in line. I mean, it's just beyond belief that you've got 480 MPs, a working majority of 165, and they can't even get this bill across the line.
Because they can't get the MPs to do what they want, and that's the point. Let's have a quick look at some of the clips for those of you who didn't see it yesterday. This is the first point at which Keir Starmer refuses to answer a question on whether she's going to still have a job in a few weeks' time.
Mr. Speaker, she's pointing at me. She looks absolutely miserable. Labour MPs, she looks absolutely miserable. Labour MPs, they can point as much as they like. The fact is, Labour MPs are going on the record saying that the Chancellor is toast, and the reality is that she is a human shield for his incompetence. In January, he said that she would be in post till the next election. Will she really?
Prime Minister. She certainly won't. Mr. Speaker, I have to say I'm always cheered up when she asks me questions or responds to a statement, because she always makes a complete mess of it and shows just how unserious and irrelevant they are. But she talks about the black hole. They left a £22 billion black hole in our economy, and we're clearing it up. And I'm really proud, Mr. Speaker, that in the first year of a Labour government we got free school meals, breakfast clubs, childcare, got £15 billion invested in transport in the North and the Midlands. We're cutting regulation, planning and infrastructure is pounding forward, building 1.5 million homes, the biggest investment in social and affordable housing, and of course, Mr. Speaker, the 3 trade deals. Remember the ones that they couldn't get, including the US trade deal. On Monday, those tariffs came down. That secured the jobs at JLR. That's who we care about on this side of the House.
How awful for the Chancellor that he couldn't confirm that she would stay in place.
Quite right too, because after all that bluster, and he kept banging on about these breakfast clubs, it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. You know, most people don't even have kids in breakfast clubs. They don't even care what he's talking about. You know, and he kept sort of falling back on it every time he was asked a difficult question. We made some breakfast clubs. Oh, great, okay. Meanwhile, she was sobbing behind him.
Yeah,
with every sort of measure that he took, with every mention that he didn't make of her actually going to keep her job. You know, she was literally, you know, she was sobbing at one point.
And what's crazy is that after PMQs, he took that clip and posted it on his little social media interns.
Right.
Posted it, put the captions on, put it up, saying, "Look what we've achieved in the year in Paris." So hang on. Do you not realise how embarrassing that is? They had to take it down very quickly. Nobody has come out of that PMQs and gone, wow, that list of achievements that Keir Starmer made about what they've achieved in their first year in power, I'm just astonished. What a fantastic Labour government we've got.
But
everyone was talking about Rachel Reeves crying. Nobody was listening to what he was saying in that video he put up. They're looking at Rachel Reeves crying in the corner.
And does it not tell you that either they didn't see that she was crying in the corner and then they put the thing out and had to withdraw it?
Oh, well, they knew by the time they posted that video after PMQs, because, I mean, the markets were crashing during PMQs.
Of course, but surely they must have known that that was a bad look. I mean, what were they thinking? And I mean, you do wonder whether he perhaps didn't know, because I mean, we all remember that scene where she sits down after having delivered her dreadful, ghastly, useless budget in November, and he does that horrible kind of Keir Starmer, puts his hand on her shoulder, leaves it there a little bit too long, you know. But there's normally, and he gave an interview later last night to Nick Robinson on the BBC, in which he said, we are in lockstep, we're almost like one person. He talks about how, you know, she and he have worked so closely together, there's the clip, worked so closely together that they're practically inseparable. Something's happened. I mean, a lot of people said to me, and I don't like your intuition on this one, that she was looking at him like a woman looks at a man after he's just dumped her. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, it did. I mean, he was listing off those achievements and she was nodding along, but clearly looking upset. But you could see she was thinking, please, please say at the end of this list that you've got full faith in your Chancellor and you're keeping her. And then he didn't say it. And then when he didn't, that's when you see the tears roll down. Yeah. That's why I'm not convinced that this is purely a personal matter, because the timing of it. She also did say in an interview, I can't remember who to, but recently, that, you know, when she was asked, how do you deal with all the hate that you get? And she said, I have no problem with people criticising my politics and my policies, but I get really upset when people make a personal attack on me. And so when Kemi Badenoch said she looks miserable and really went for her, that probably really tipped her over the edge after a very stressful week when she's, as you say, probably been in tears the whole week, had barely any sleep. So
because the other thing they've said is that she had a row with the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, just before PMQs began, which supposedly was overheard by somebody who writes a diary, so it definitely happened. But again, whatever that was, it might have been the final straw, but I can't believe that. I mean, I'm sure she's been having arguments all week. Yeah. So whether with all of her backbench MPs, so I'm not sure how much difference an argument with Lindsay Hoyle is going to make. The reality is that this has crashed the market. This has had huge consequences. What I find hilarious is that Rachel Reeves, despite crashing the market several times, huge crash in the markets, of course, after her autumn budget and those huge tax rises, she still constantly refers to Liz Truss and Liz Truss's budget, saying, oh, thank God we're not that lot. And it's like, you kind of are now. Are you really that different? And also, just going back to how Keir Starmer dealt with the situation, I mean, we've said many times that he's like an AI robot, and he very much showed himself to be here. No sympathy whatsoever, just railing off that list of his supposed achievements in the breakfast clubs. Even after he sat back down, you didn't really see him give her a hug or anything. Well, that's how the papers The only person that offered her, you know, any kind of support was her sister after PMQs, and it wasn't just Keir Starmer. They walked out hand in hand, apparently. But one of the other things that's interesting is that, you know, there were people sort of patting her on the shoulder throughout the whole, you know, PMQs before the sobbing began, almost as though they all knew there was something wrong. But the papers have dealt with it, interestingly. You've got, you talk about why didn't you give her a hug. Rachel needed a hug, says Sarah Vine on the front of the Mail. Instead, Starmer sucked her dry to shore up his own position like the political vampire he is, which is interesting. The Sun have got, was it OK for the Chancellor to cry? Yes. Says Caroline Ingledon. No, says Clemmy Moody. You know, and Clemmy writes a really good piece here where she says she met Rachel Reeves at a party a few weeks ago. She was warm, gentle and touchingly self-deprecating. She spoke about her kids with real motherly love, etc., etc. But she said, you know, you're in a top position. It doesn't matter whether you're a woman or bloke. You know, I saw Kwasi Kwarteng talking about this last night. He was like, I didn't burst into tears, you know, because you just don't. It's not a question of whether you're a man or a woman, but it doesn't help women, does it, if the first woman Chancellor is now remembered for that?
No, it certainly doesn't. And everyone in life, everyone cries, everyone has their moments. But when this has genuine consequences, us people complaining about this isn't just about having a lack of sympathy. This has real consequences, because now this means that borrowing costs have gone up, which means that we're going to lose even more fiscal headroom. We're going to have to spend more money on servicing debt rather than having money to spend on the NHS, policing and whatever else we want our money spent on. This has serious consequences, and so if there was a genuine personal matter, she shouldn't have been there.
No.
Liz Kendall also should have been there, because we knew this PMQs was going to be all about that welfare bill having failed. She should have been there to support Keir Starmer, rather than it being all eyes on the Chancellor for this complete failure to get this welfare bill through properly. Well, they got it through after taking the whole
it's
point
not really
out
the
of it.
welfare bill. I mean,
I know there's nothing. It
might as well be a blank piece of paper for all they put through. But let's have a look at what Wes Streeting, who's coming on the show later on, by the way, in a rather remarkable move for the government. Wes Streeting on Rachel Reeves crying. Have a look.
Rachel, as a team have said today, has something going on personally, not professionally, and it's easy to forget, but we are all humans as politicians, and we have lives like everyone else.
He's going to come on later, and you know, we'll see whether he can reveal any more about it. But as you say, I mean, we've all been in situations where something happens in your personal life that affects your job, and you either take a view that you're going to still go to work, or you're going to take the day off, or you're going to, you know, put yourself into, you know, some kind of situation where you're not going to tell people what it is because it's none of their business. But in which case, as you say, she shouldn't have been there. And I'm sure if she had said to Starmer, you know, look, I really don't feel like I'm up to it today. I know it's going to look bad, but if we put out a statement saying, you know, I've got a personal issue, I'm not able to be there, I'm sure people would have left that alone. I don't think they would have speculated that she was trying to hide from the public, or that she was trying to, you know, dip out of her responsibilities, because, you know, we now, I mean, that might have happened 20 years ago, you know, but nowadays everybody's so kind of careful not to upset anyone that they don't go in for the jugular anymore.
I mean, I'm sure there would have been some speculation, and some people would say, oh, she may have made that up to avoid facing the music about the welfare bill, but the fallout would have been a heck of a lot less than what has happened here. She should not have been on that front bench. Also, if it genuinely is a personal matter, I know we've got, you know, we want to respect people's privacy and whatnot, but the speculation that this is fueling is, as we've said, causing such chaos in the markets. If they just told us, look, her grandma's died, and told us the truth, whatever it is, then that would quell a lot of this speculation. But they cannot leave this vacuum open any longer, because, as I said, this has real consequences on the markets. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, well, I don't work in the city, that doesn't affect me. Yes, it does affect you, because this affects the cost of borrowing, which means less money that the government can spend on all of us. It affects
the cost of the exchange rate as well, and all kinds of things that they're affected by. And also, it gives the impression, I was watching all sorts of things last night, and various different people saying, giving their views, you know, it gives an impression of the government as being emotionally kind of spent as well. It gives the impression of the government of people running it who are literally at the end of their tether. They can't take the pressure. I mean, the front page of The Sun, I'm under so much pressure, is what it says, and it's absolutely right. You cannot run a government when you are emotionally, you know, bankrupt. If you're out of, you know, if you're too tired, if you're overtired, if you haven't slept, you can't do your job. And if it's that much of a bad situation for her, then he needs to let her go. And I think there's no doubt in anybody's mind that that's exactly how this is all going to end up. He's going to have to get rid of her one way or another.
I think the whole Labour government is looking really tired and really stressed, not just Rachel Reeves, but Keir Starmer himself.
He's very jumpy.
It is a very tough job. I don't want to be Prime Minister, because you'd be working 7 days a week, never have a day off in it. Would be absolutely
there's nothing good going on.
Yeah, and also
bad.
Bear in mind, women do need quite a bit more sleep than men. So being worn down, having sleepless nights over the welfare bill, that's going to drag down a woman more than a man. Some people might not want to admit that, but that is the biological fact.
Well, unfortunately for those people who think that there aren't any differences between men and women, I'm afraid there are. You know, and I'm afraid it's as simple as that. Let's get a voice note from Kitty.
Good morning, Mike and team. Kitty from Kent here. All you need to know about Rachel Thieves' tears is that seconds before the crocodile tears trickled down her puffy face, she'd been sneering and jeering and pointing at Kemi Badenoch. And I know that if you're upset at work, you don't sneer and jeer shortly before tears. She's looking for sympathy vote. I'm sure that you're not going to fall for it. Have a lovely day.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't particularly enjoy watching somebody crying on their when they're at work. It's like you don't want to see that when you're working with people here. You know, if somebody started weeping in the gallery there, you know, I just fire them. No, sorry, no, I just go. You know, if you want to take some time, go. You know, you have to be nice to people. You know, you don't want to see that. So at the end of the day, you know, she's really let the side down, and maybe Kitty's right. You know, maybe she suddenly. I don't know what it was that triggered it, but there's a massive problem with this. Let's have a look at what some of your messages are. 2-tier Keir, now we have 2 tiers Reeves, says Russell. An absolute joke. Mick says, morning, Mike. Regarding Rachel Reeves saying it was a personal matter, if you watch the footage, the matter didn't seem to affect her until 10 minutes into PMQs. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there is that theory that, you know, she's putting it all on as well. Surely that wouldn't be true, would it?
I mean, it could be that, regardless of whether it was a personal matter or it was an argument with Lindsay Hoyle or an argument with Angela Rayner or just all the stress and lack of sleep from the past week. This is a woman who clearly came into PMQs on edge, as it is. And then Kemi Badenoch's question and Keir Starmer's pathetic response failing to back the Chancellor, that pushed her over the edge after a very stressful week.
Yeah. Maybe.
People are unlikely to burst into tears if they've had a fantastic day already, unless it's something really serious, right? But it's normally a multitude of different things, and then you have one thing pushes you over the edge, and that's clearly, you know, as you said, she looked tired and miserable before. I mean, Kemi Badenoch said she looks miserable before she started crying, and that was the case. So it may be a couple of different things, but very clearly. Kemi Badenoch's question and Keir Starmer's response upset her, and it is not a good look and really looks like a government that is falling apart, especially when this comes at the time. We've got the welfare bill and this happening right before the first anniversary of the Labour government tomorrow, where everyone is asking the question, how is it going? How well have Labour done their first year in office? And then, you know, this is what we've got to celebrate it. It's just crazy.
Tears of a clown, as you might say. Yeah, there's a great piece in The Sun about the first year anniversary, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Coming up, we'll play you what Keir Starmer said later on. He took a few hours to get it together, but he said later on that he was very much in support of his Chancellor. It's coming up next.
I agree with you. I really doubt that she does have these personal issues, and if she did, she should not have been in the Commons anyway, if there was a risk of it resulting in something like this. There are, of course, then also the rumours that she had a bit of an argument with Lindsay Hoyle, something that's been rumbling on for a couple of days. And, you know, I'm personally of the view, I think Lindsay Hoyle probably is a bit of a, loudmouth and someone that likes to throw his weight around probably a bit too much like his predecessor, Bercow, as well.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. Excuse me, I'm Mike Graham with a slight frog in my throat. I'll try and get rid of that. 25 minutes past 6. Lots and lots of headlines this morning. Very similar. All front pages covering Rachel Reeves' waterworks. I'm under so much pressure, it says on the front page of The Sun, what Reeves said just before the tears started falling. What or who caused the tears that sparked turmoil in the markets? Front page of the Daily Mail. Even the Financial Times has got it on there, saying gilts and pounds slump after Reeves' tears trigger fears for fiscal vigilance. Front page of the Telegraph. Pound falls after Reeves' tears. This is why it's an important story. It's not just about whether or not a woman should have cried at work. It's about how it's affecting the markets and how it's affecting pensions, how it's affecting the economy, how it's affecting the cost of borrowing, how it's affecting absolutely everything about what this company and what this country is trying to do. Day of drama leaves Reeves on the brink. Reeves battles doubters after Prime Minister spooks the markets. Absolutely incredible. Well, some hours later, I suppose it was on the 10 o'clock news last night, which would have been, what, about sort of, 10 hours effectively after what the Chancellor had been going through, and when the Prime Minister did not stand up for in the House of Commons. This is what he said to the BBC.
She's made it clear it's a personal matter, and I'm not going to go into the personal matter of a colleague. What I will say is that she's done an excellent job as Chancellor. We have delivered inward investment to this country in record numbers, £120 billion. That'll be measured in jobs. We've created conditions for wages to go up, and we've jointly worked on the spending review, which is very broadly popular. She's done a fantastic job. She and I work together, we think together, and in the past there have been examples, I won't give any specific, of chancellors and prime ministers who weren't sort of in lockstep. We're in lockstep.
People assumed it was because of politics, that she decided to quit, or you'd said to her, Rachel, I'm sorry.
Look, firstly, Nick, is that wrong? It's wrong. I can just tell you that. That's absolutely wrong. Got nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with what's happened this week.
Chloe Dobbs is here. The trouble with Keir Starmer, right, is that nobody believes a word he says, right? And I'm watching him there, and I was watching it last night. I don't believe what he's saying to me there, because it took him 10 hours to come up with that after having not defended her when she was actually in tears, sobbing, sitting behind him to his left. And at the end of the day, it's all BS, isn't it? He talks about we've created the situation where, people can get loads of more jobs. Well, yeah, but that's not like creating jobs. You haven't created any jobs. He has not stabilised the economy. The economy is going down the gurgler faster than you can say Rachel Reeves. There's nothing good that's going on that they've created since they've been in. And the idea that he says we're in lockstep, we're almost one person, and it's absolutely got nothing to do with politics. That's the same kind of attitude he had when somebody said, is there a two-tier police system in this country? Is there two-tier justice? No, absolutely not. He just denies it straight out. And it's not convincing, I'm afraid, is it?
Absolutely not. I mean, he just gets clearly this pre-prepared list given to him of these are all our supposed achievements. And a lot of these stats are often very cherry-picked. So, for example, he made the point at PMQs yesterday, at the start of the year we were the fastest growing economy in the G7, right, despite the fact that pretty much all of our other growth figures for after that period keep on, growth forecasts keep getting downgraded.
Right.
There's specific...
Well, they can only talk about the first quarter because when April came in, suddenly that was when all the new taxes kicked in, and that was when the economy started diving.
Yeah, exactly. It's not one of the reasons why we were the best in the G7 at the start of the year is because other countries that were expected to be hit harder by Donald Trump's tariffs were sort of freaking out, preparing for that. We also sold a lot of things to the US before tariffs came into effect, which meant that on our exports we had a boost before in April that Trump Liberation Day, as he's calling it, came into effect. So there's just a little blip in the stats, but he won't stop talking about it because it's all he's got to boast about.
It's all he's got,
that and breakfast clubs. And he sat there...
Breakfast clubs? I mean, who cares? Seriously.
Yeah, and he sat there on Radio 4 being, it was just a personal matter, nothing's gone wrong. OK, regardless of whether it was just a personal matter, you've got questions to answer because you were very clearly asked by Kemi Badenoch, will Rachel Reeves still be in power in a year's time? And he completely failed to give an answer to that. That's his fault.
It is his fault. I mean, he later said to Nick Robinson, yes, she will be. But it was a much later, you know, it wasn't his initial reaction was not to talk about it. His initial reaction was to say nothing about it and to go ranting on about his breakfast clubs.
Well, that's often his approach, is to just avoid.
Yeah.
You saw it on various other things, like, for example, the Supreme Court ruling on what a woman is. He disappeared for 6 days. He just went off radar. He didn't know what to do.
Right.
And this is not leadership.
Well, this is
a weak leader.
I don't wish to keep banging on about this great piece in The Sun, but it's written by me on page 12, and it's all about the year of Keir Starmer. And you go back through all the things that have happened, and which many of us have probably, I mean, even when I was writing it, I'd forgotten about. You know, all the way back to Lord Ali, and, you know, the fact that they were going to be a government of service, and suddenly it turns out they were just a government of freebies. And not only was he getting free suits and free glasses, but his wife was getting free clothes. You know, Lord Ali had access to Downing Street. We still never really were told what he was doing in there and what meetings he was attending and what power he had. But it seems like he was certainly picking people before.
He was buying his way into power.
He was buying his way into power. He was delivering. He was working very closely with Sue Gray. They were picking candidates to run in certain seats, right, including her own son, who was also supplied with some freebies as well. Then there was the whole Taylor Swift gate, you know, when they all got free tickets to go and see Taylor Swift, and pretended he was sitting way at the back when in fact he got backstage and there was pictures of him meeting her. You know, there was just this ridiculous, relentless litany of free stuff that they were doing. The free flat, the mysterious free flat that he had in the penthouse in Covent Garden. You know, all of this stuff. And I asked the question, well, which Keir Starmer are we supposed to believe? You know, because there are so many different ones. Is it the one who doesn't know what a woman is? Is it the one that doesn't know whether there should be an inquiry into the rape gang scandal? Or, you know, does this guy not know anything until he's told something by a lawyer? It's bizarre.
I've said it before and I'll say it again, he just goes whichever way the wind blows. Pretty much anything he says, you can go back and you can find a clip of him saying the exact opposite.
Absolutely.
This is a man with no conviction. It's perfectly reasonable for some people to change their opinion from time to time. I've changed my opinion on some things, I'm sure you have over time. But when someone flip-flops very conveniently, whenever it's best to do so, whichever way the public opinion is going, whatever's going to get him the most votes, and never seems to stick to anything, it's very clear this man doesn't really believe in anything. This is just a job to him.
Yeah.
He is a lawyer, he's not a proper politician, he's got no idea what he is doing running this country.
And he wakes up every morning, he must do now, thinking, crikey, you know, what can I do to get myself back on track? This one from Ernie, he says, Mike, you're all looking in the wrong place. Look at Rayner while Reeves cries. I don't know if we can we play that clip again then when Kemi
Not just
Badenoch's
Rayner,
having a
but
go?
all of the women on the front bench were not offering her any support whatsoever. They just sat there like lemons.
OK, well, let's play it again and have a look if we can.
Miserable. Labour She's pointing at me. She looks absolutely miserable. Yeah. Labour MPs, yeah, she looks absolutely miserable. Labour MPs, they can point as much as they like. The fact is, Labour MPs are going on the record saying that the Chancellor is toast, and the reality is that she is a human shield for his incompetence. In January, he said that she would be in post till the next election. Will she really?
Prime Minister. She certainly won't. Mr. Speaker, I have to say I'm always cheered up when she asks me questions or responds to a statement, because she always makes a complete mess of it and shows just how unserious and irrelevant they are. But she talks about the black hole. They left a £22 billion black hole in our economy, and we're clearing it up. And I'm really proud, Mr. Speaker, that in the first year of a Labour government we got free school meals, breakfast.
Miserable there, because normally she would be making fun of the opposite side, but she's not looking at Rachel Reeves at all. She's looking sort of straight down or looking at the floor. Maybe there's something in that. Let's get a voice note from Ben.
Morning, Mike. Ben from Birmingham. Rachel Reeves crying in Parliament yesterday. That's the face of a woman that's realised she's lied on a CV to get one of the most important jobs in the country, and the realisation that the whole country knows she's a fraud and terrible at her job. I've got no sympathy for her whatsoever. Great show, Mike. Keep up the good work.
Ben, thank you very much indeed. No sympathy for her whatsoever. She's a fraud. She's somebody who faked her own CV to get one of the top jobs in the country. You know, people haven't got a lot of sympathy for her, I'm afraid.
I haven't seen very much sympathy at all, just looking online.
Not from the punters, not from ordinary voters, not from ordinary people.
No, and I've seen a lot of people pointing to the fact that there was a farmer who very sadly took his life as a consequence of the tax raid on farmers, saying, why should I have sympathy for you crying if a farmer has ended his life because of your policy, which wasn't going to raise much money, but was going to cause absolute havoc for the farming community. So people haven't got much sympathy whatsoever. I've seen some people saying Kemi Badenoch went too far with that question, saying she looks miserable and going for the way she looks.
But as you say, she was doing it in response to them sort of pointing and doing all this and kind of, you know, trying to mock the Tories. So at that point, she wasn't crying.
Yeah. I mean, you know, maybe Kemi Badenoch pushed a little bit far there, but
I thought she did well yesterday.
PMQs, it's going to be fiery, and if you can't take that, if you can't take someone saying you look miserable, are you really up to the job of, as you say, one of the most important, or as he said, one of the most important jobs in the country? I think she is feeling very out of her depth as a woman who is not very experienced. She was not an economist at HBOS. She was working in the complaints department, probably making cups of tea and using the photocopier. And now she's in charge of the nation's finances.
I know.
It's crazy.
It's frightening, really,
and she's got no clue what she's doing, and she's clearly feeling it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Wendy says this in Clackmannanshire. Mike, another great common sense show. Thank you. I remember you saying a couple of weeks ago that Rachel Reeves was rumoured to be going around in tears. If true, then yesterday was not a personal matter and more Labour lies. Well, I think that's right. Tony in Barrow-in-Furness says, Mike, do you think the way Starmer threw Rachel Reeves under the bus will lose Starmer the woman's vote? I'm not sure he had the woman's vote to begin with. Let's not forget, this is a Prime Minister who's been elected with one of the lowest actual votes in terms of numbers of any Prime Minister in the history of the country. That's why it's called a very thin majority, even though there's a lot of people in Parliament who are now Labour MPs. It's actually very, very thin, and they're all going to be out of a job in less than 3 years, maybe 4. 0344 499 1000 is the number at 6:36.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:38. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Wes Streeting is going to be on the show later on in a bizarre twist. I mean, Chloe Dobbs is here. The government don't normally give us anybody to talk to, but they've given us Wes Streeting this morning. And, of course, Wes Streeting, we saw earlier on saying it's a personal matter. You know, we're not going to really talk about what happened to Rachel during PMQs. But he's being mentioned as one of the possible runners and riders as a successor to Rachel Reeves, if and when she does get the push, that Wes Streeting might actually get the job. because the problem is, she wasn't an economist. They haven't got anybody else who was an economist. I mean, they got Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary with no experience of business. They haven't really got any sort of fiscal experts there that they could say suddenly, like Jeremy Hunt, here's a guy you can put in to be Chancellor of the Exchequer. So Wes Streeting has literally no economic background whatsoever, but he's being talked about as a possible next Chancellor, which is a bit terrifying, isn't it?
I mean, he's the one person in the cabinet that I have a decent amount of respect for, in that although he may not have experience as an economist, it seems like he's the one person in the cabinet that has his head screwed on.
He comes across as a bit more normal.
He comes across a bit more intelligent than the rest of them. I'll give him that. And when it comes to the NHS, that is the one area where I maybe have a little bit of hope, because although things aren't all plain sailing, I do think that he has got some interesting plans, and he has shown that he's got the tenacity to be willing to do difficult things, ask difficult questions about the structure of the NHS and whatnot. So we'll see what happens. When it comes to the market fallout, there's an article in the Telegraph saying that the reason why the markets are having chaos is because they actually desperately don't want Rachel Reeves to go. They were so worried after that tearful PMQs that Rachel Reeves is going to get the boot. Right. And what they're not saying that Rachel Reeves is amazing, but what they're saying is that if you get rid of her, you're probably going to end up with somebody even more left-wing, even less fiscally responsible. Rachel Reeves, although she hasn't been very good at making growth in the economy, she has, told backbenchers, nope, sorry, you can't get everything you want. We've got rules to stick to. I can't give a free handout to all of you. Yeah. And so she has stuck to her guns on some things.
She has, and maybe that's what's caused the problem between her and Angela Rayner, because Angela Rayner obviously is very well liked by many of the backbenchers, particularly the left-wingers, who see Angela Rayner as their kind of totem.
Exactly. Imagine if Angela Rayner or Ed Miliband were in charge of the country's finances.
I know.
The net zero budget would suddenly be 200 billion a year.
It would be mad. Just talking about Wes Streeting, though, today is the day that they unveil this new 10-year plan to somehow revive the NHS. Thousands more GPs and fewer hospital consultants will be trained in an effort to shift healthcare closer to where people live. And that's according to what the government are going to announce. This in the Times today. 200 new neighbourhood health centres will offer scans, outpatient appointments, mental health therapy and a host of services without the need to go to hospital, under proposals to be outlined in the government's 10-year plan. Well, the trouble is, again, whenever we talk about the NHS on this show, we get the people of this country, the people who listen to this show and watch it, giving us their verdicts and telling us how they're getting on in the NHS. And the NHS is not getting any better. Yesterday he did it again, Keir Starmer. One of the things he talks about is, all these appointments, these new appointments they've got. He said, we promised 2 million, we've now got 4 million. Last week it was 3 million. Now they're saying they've got 4 million new appointments, and everybody knows people are getting appointments made and appointments cancelled. And I've been banging on this particular drum for a while, is that what happens is they give you a new appointment, they move you off the waiting list, you're then on a new waiting list, and then before the appointment actually comes to fruition, they cancel it. And so there's an actual policy, I believe, and I'm going to ask him about this, which is out there, which the NHS is actively pursuing, where they go, right, let's just move a load of people off the waiting lists so that it looks like they're going down, because we've given them an appointment. So they're not waiting anymore. But technically, unless you're being seen by a doctor or somebody who's a medical practitioner, you're not solving anybody's health problem.
Yes, I don't know exactly how this 4 million figure has been calculated, but if it is genuinely true and we've genuinely got 4 million more appointments, the reality is the NHS has reached such a dire state that it's going to take a lot more than 4 million appointments for people to genuinely start feeling it and feeling like things are moving on the right track. I really hope that Wes Streeting is able to bring some genuine change to the NHS, rather than just, as you say, shifting the numbers around with people off waiting lists.
I don't doubt that the numbers are right. It may well be that they've made 2 million, 3 million, 4 million appointments, but if they're not actually being kept, then it matters not, does it? Because they're not actually an appointment that is not met and that doesn't take place, does not mean you've done anything.
No, it doesn't mean you've done anything at all. And I think that it's been a common theme throughout the past year of this Labour government that what they do to make it look like they've done something is they're constantly just fiddling with figures, moving numbers around, and then announcing it to us and thinking that us fools are going to believe that they're changing the country, when actually it's not the case. We constantly get all these figures like, oh, we've deported this many people. Everyone knows that's not the people that we actually genuinely need to have deported from the country. But I think that they just think that we are stupid. We'll see what Wes Streeting does with these local hubs. I'm sure you'll ask him all about it. I think it would be good if we can move to a situation where people are diagnosed and treated at an early stage of whatever problem that they've got, because we've reached a point with the NHS where you don't get anything until you are on your deathbed. And the number of people that are dying of cancer and whatnot because they weren't dealt with until the very last moment is just unbelievable. And I don't want us to go on in this situation where we've got so many excess deaths, so many people dying who should not be dying because the NHS just cannot deal with them. Maybe those local hubs will help with that, or maybe these local hubs will just be more expensive.
Yeah, but again, like an awful lot of Labour's plans, you know, it's all very well to say we're going to build these local hubs. How long is that going to take? You know, is it going to take 5 years? They say it's a 10-year plan. Are we going to have to wait 10 years before you and I can go to a local hub? Are we going to have to wait? Because people still tell me, and I want actually to hear from a lot of you on this today, because Wes Streeting is actually going to be on the show, so I want to be able to say to him, this is what our audience is saying that the NHS is not doing properly. This is what they're saying, because what they always say to me is that you still have to try and get yourself an appointment at the GPs, and if it's something that is not absolutely urgent, they'll say, well, we can maybe see you in a month, or we may see you in 2 weeks. You can't get an appointment with the GP, you know, tomorrow or today. You just can't, unless you've, you know, literally got, you know, you've got to sort of throw yourself under a bus or something and get yourself taken to A&E, and that's the problem.
That's the thing, is with everything, they just say, you've got to go to A&E.
Yeah, but again, you know, listening to Starmer talking about all the things that he says he's achieved, you know, half of the achievements are not achievements. You know, we've created the atmosphere for a load of jobs to be found. Well, that's not creating jobs. You know, that doesn't mean anything.
Rachel Reeves has supposedly lost us 184,000 jobs.
She has.
And that national insurance hike has just killed off hiring. How can they stand there and say that? It's a joke.
It's a lie,
it's
apart from anything else. It's a barefaced lie. Phil from Peterborough says, great show, Mike. Morning. What a shambles this government is. We all expected incompetence, but the lies, Mike, the lies are off the scale. Our Rachel will be gone by the weekend, mark my words. I don't disagree with that. I think you're right. I keep expecting to hear any minute now Rachel Reeves has tendered her resignation. One from Tony in Devon. He says, finally, Kemi grows a pair, calling this omni-shambles of a Labour Party out. Gross achievements in office, give everything away while take from British taxpayers. Labour's achieved F all in office except misery and more debt through entirely their own incompetence. Snap, crackle and pop breakfast clubs. That's true. I mean, I haven't got much to boast about. It really is quite extraordinary. Coming up, though, 6:46, Chloe Dobbs and I are here. We'll be finding out why clean living Gen Zers are apparently turning to drink as they grow up. Yeah, well, welcome to the real world, sweetheart. This is Talk.
Fine, look, Speaker argues with Minister, it's not exactly new. They're saying, look, she had some personal upset already, and it's, it's sort of straw that broke the camel's back. But you can't, call me old-fashioned, whatever is going on. It's a bit like Keir Starmer saying,
up a lip.
Like Keir Starmer saying last week, I was distracted by my global trotting and summit hopping.
You can't do two things at once.
Yeah, so I was distracted by the fact that, so I missed the fact that my party were upset about it. Look, come on, mate.
You're the Prime Minister.
You're the Prime Minister, you've got to be able to juggle some balls.
Yeah.
UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:49. I'm Mike Graham. Chloe Dobbs is here. Joanna from Salisbury says, Mike, no one ever saw Maggie Thatcher fold for anything. She didn't lie on her CV and took on a whole lot more. Well, I think that's absolutely fair to say. I mean, I think she took the slings and arrows a lot better. You never saw... Although you did remember when she was finally sort of shuffled out of Downing Street, there was that great photograph that was taken by one of the Fleet Street photographers of her just sitting in the back of the car, being driven away, and a tear coming down her cheek. But that was when she was leaving.
I saw an article yesterday saying, oh, you know, Rachel Reeves, she's not a softie because she's not the first person to do this. Even the Iron Lady cried. Yeah. And even Theresa May cried when she was giving her resignation speech. I'm like, it's okay to cry on the way out. That's a little bit different to crying on the front benches at PMQs after you've just had a disastrous
also, the difference between those
failure
two,
with your welfare bill.
And also, both Theresa May and Margaret Thatcher both kind of cried. It was a kind of a regret cry, if you like, because obviously they were leaving the job that they loved doing. And they didn't particularly want to leave it. And it had all ended badly, as it always does, unfortunately, if you're a Prime Minister. But this was not a regretful woman who is leaving her job, as far as we know, as far as we're told. This is a woman who seems to be overwhelmed by the hugeness of the situation she's in, that she can't handle. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, and she said right before going in, I'm under so much pressure.
Under so much
Even
pressure.
if there was some other personal matter going on, she clearly was feeling the pressure of her job, not just external matters.
Exactly. Nan in Wales says this, at breakfast clubs, it's a slice of toast, that's what they get, nothing else. She should be crying. She's ruined our lives. She's robbed us of what little we already had and had intended to do more damage. Useless and shameful. Do the right thing, Rachel, and go now before you lose it altogether. No sympathy here. I think that's pretty clear. Let's have a look at another clip from yesterday. This is on Lorraine Kelly's show. Angela Rayner talking about a Labour government.
So the prospect of Nigel Farage in number 10 will give everybody basically a rocket up their bottom so that they have to get things done
Nigel
quickly.
Farage was the key architect for Brexit and all these wonderful things we were going to get. And we haven't had those wonderful things. Now, we can argue this, that, the other. We were promised a lot and we haven't had that. So I think you have to be very sceptical about people that will promise the world a moon on a stick and then there's no detail of how they can actually deliver it.
Angela, thank you.
So Angela Rayner out on manoeuvres. That was yesterday, before PMQs, I guess. So it's all happening. It's all going on. They're all out there because the great thing about politicians is that they can't be trusted. You know, no matter how close they seem to be as a group. You know, Labour right now will be sort of falling around. It'll be fragmenting in all sorts of different ways. There'll be the Rachel Reeves crowd over here. Not very many of them. There'll be the Ed Miliband crowd over there. There'll be the Angela Rayner crowd. There'll be the Keir Starmer crowd. There'll be all the people in Downing Street who are fighting like rats in a sack because they're all trying to work out whose fault it is that it's all gone terribly wrong on the anniversary of their first year. And nobody knows really who's going to emerge as the new boss, because there will be one. I mean, I've said for ages that Keir Starmer's not going to last the pace, and neither is Rachel Reeves. I think she's gone sooner rather than later, and I think he's gone before the end of the year.
Well, Keir Starmer will be very wary that if he gets rid of Rachel Reeves, that he will have to go as well. Yeah. Because that is exactly what happened with Liz Truss. Liz Truss thought, I'll just throw the Chancellor under the bus and I'll get off scot-free. But that didn't work, did it? Everyone said, well, it was your decision.
It was your decision,
You told him what to do. You signed off on everything. So if he's going, you should go. And it will be the exact same for Keir Starmer. Yeah. It's not like Rachel Reeves has been defying Keir Starmer and they've been going on completely separate tracks at odd. I know there've been a few, kerfuffles over defence spending and whatnot, but on the whole, these two are, I mean, what was the term he used? In lockstep with each other. If she goes, then he has to go.
Absolutely.
So I'd be quite surprised if he gets rid of her. And I do think she's awful,
he's not going to have any
but
choice.
I'm not sure if there's going to be anyone better than her.
Well,
can you imagine if we had like Angela Rayner or Ed Miliband running the country's finances?
Well, this is
God
the
help
trouble.
us.
This is the trouble. I mean, they don't have anyone that can actually have an economic background who can do it. But it is the anniversary. Tomorrow, in fact, is Friday, the 4th of July. It was only 1 year ago that we elected this mob and put them into power. And look at what the mess they've now created. It's a big special coming up at 9 o'clock tomorrow night, right here on Talk. Have a look.
1 year on.
And it's already falling apart.
We did it! smash the people-smuggling gangs.
There is no deterrent.
More and more migrants have come to Britain.
I thought Starmer would definitely last the 4 or 5 years. Now I'm thinking 2 maximum.
And it turns out that Keir Starmer had a wardrobe busier than David Beckham's.
One explosive hour.
U-turn after U-turn.
I'm frightened about how bad they are.
Absolute incompetence and deceit.
1 year of chaos.
Only on Talk.
A lot of people were saying to us yesterday, you know, it's 3 days, still 3 days to go. You know, maybe we've got a bit early with the chaos and the crisis, because there is a lot to be said for that. You know, but literally every single day now, there's something else which is you know, even more amazing than the thing that happened last time. Let's get a voice note from Len.
Morning, Mike. Len from Brighton here. Great show as always. No sympathy for Rachel Thieves whatsoever. Absolutely none. Did she shed a tear at all for when she took the pensioners' fuel payments away from them? No, she didn't. Get rid of her, Starmer, and then get rid of yourself. Cheers, Mike. Have a good day.
Well done, Len. Thank you very much indeed. Speaking of migrants, by the way, great spread in the Mail today, pages 14 and 15. Desperate migrants herded onto dinghies. I mean, incredibly, you know, graphic pictures of people as a woman getting on with a man and a child. A report from Neil Sears in Gravelines near Calais in France, and it's all and it shows her landing in the UK. You know, it's the first time I've seen somebody actually travelling, you know, and picking up the same person from France to Dover. But it just talks about how ridiculous the whole situation is. They're being herded basically onto dinghies by the people traffickers, and they're arriving in Britain. Arrivals on Tuesday, 440, so that's 43,664 now for our migrant tracker since Labour got in. Basically, Keir Starmer vowed in May last year, they say, to smash the gangs who smuggle migrants into Britain, and made it a Labour election manifesto pledge. However, 43,664 people have come since then.
That's crazy. And remember, Rishi Sunak, he did that deal with the Albanians to get the figure down from 45,000 to 30,000. Still far too many, but he made a significant progress on that, right? And now we're back to where we started. And I wouldn't be surprised if we hit 50,000 by the end of the year, because although we're at 20,000 now and we have had good weather at the start of the year, bear in mind that you have the worst months of winter in January and February, and you get the best months of summer in the second half of the year in July and August. You don't really get, until between now and the end of this year, you don't get the worst of the winter. So I think in the second half of the year, you'd probably expect there to be more. So if we're at 20,000 now, we could well hit 50,000 by the end of the year. I mean, we've been told we've agreed with the French some migrant swap policy, but believe it when we see it, right?
Well, I mean, that's one in, one out. I mean, that's complete madness. I mean, we covered it last week. I mean, it makes no sense at all. I mean, this is the thing that Keir Starmer came up with because he thought it might help. And in fact, it was just rubbished by everybody who knows anything about the way that migration works. But let's just move off that for a second. Final story of the day, because we're almost out of time. On the front page of the Times this morning, Gen Z, the clean living Gen Zers are apparently turning to drink as they grow up, because it was thought that they were not drinking because of a lifestyle choice, but in fact a lot of them weren't drinking just because they couldn't afford it.
Well, I think that this might have something to do with lockdown. I'm not sure exactly when they have done these figures, but a lot of young people that would have been out partying and nightclubbing during COVID were not. I mean, I know some people drunk quite a bit at home, but I think that's probably got something to do with it. I'm a little bit sceptical of this idea that they're drinking more when they're older because they've got more money, given we've got a cost of living crisis now. But I suppose maybe...
I think it's the fact that more of them are going into work now, I think. So
I guess when you're a student, you're pretty strapped, and then after you leave that, I mean, I do think there is quite a big drinking culture in this country, and that's never going to go away completely. I think it's probably a bit of both. People drinking a bit more when they get older, but I think Gen Zers still are drinking less than their older counterparts. A lot of them, especially since COVID, are getting into running and fitness, and that trend has kind of stuck. It's kept growing.
Well,
go down to Battersea Park at 9 AM on Saturday, and you'll see what's going on with the young people. They're all running.
Are they? And I also see a lot of these bars and things that are opening up with things like there's one not far from here, which is a sort of a hurling or curling rather, bar. So you go there, you don't really go there to drink, you go there to play a game. And there's a lot of that going on as well, certainly in London.
Yeah, I mean, when I was at university, yes, we had all sorts of like activities and societies and whatnot, but they were all just an excuse to drink. Yeah. I've always been quite shocked by these figures, although I say some people have been getting into running and whatnot. I mean, when I was at university, people got smashed 6 days of the week, maybe had one day off if they were lucky.
That's what they should be doing. I mean, that's what you go to university for, isn't it? I mean, that's what I remember doing anyway. But there we are. Great to see you, Chloe. Thank you very much indeed. Have we played Len? I think we have played Len, haven't we? We've got lots more to do. James Price is coming up in the next hour. This from Chris in Amesbury. Mike, how right you were. 2 or 3 years ago, you said, let's get Labour in and we'll see how much worse it can get. Cheers, mate. Yeah, I'm not sure if you mean that as you mean. Morning, Mike and Chloe. I think Rachel Thieves is going for Pip, citing anxiety. Says Pete in Sheffield. That's possible. And Peter, the sun is out again today. I'm going to put my shorts and bask in the thought of the Labour government in total collapse, says Steph. Yeah, well, I think lots of people are wondering when the other shoe is going to drop. How long can Rachel Reeves stay in her job, given what we saw yesterday? 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Back after the news.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? And we'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7 and goodness gracious me, we are right in the middle of it, ladies and gentlemen, I have to say. Last night you saw Keir Starmer try to defend Rachel Reeves. He said that they are in lockstep. He said that his Chancellor was here for the long term. He made no reference at all to why he thought that she was bursting into tears in Prime Minister's questions yesterday. Apparently it's a personal matter, according to those people in Downing Street. But of course some of you pointing out that before she burst into tears, she was pointing and waving and jeering at Kemi Badenoch in Prime Minister's questions before Kemi Badenoch said she looks terrible, she looks miserable, she didn't look as if she'd had a decent sleep in about 2 weeks, tears rolling down her face. She's on the front pages this morning. If this was a personal matter, why did she have to sit there, says Judith Woods on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Front page of the Times, Reeves battles doubters after Prime Minister spooks markets. The big story here is not just that Rachel Reeves burst into tears at work, it's the fact that she burst into tears caused the markets to absolutely wobble. According to the front page of the Financial Times, gilts and pounds slump after Reeves fears tears trigger fears for fiscal vigilance. And according to the FT, gilts slumped 0.6 percentage points to 4.61%, the biggest one-day rise since the global bond market rout in April, and at one point the sharpest sell-off since Liz Truss's ill-fated 2022 mini-budget. The pound dropped 0.9% against the dollar and 0.7% against the euro. So the consequence of what she did yesterday and the tears that rolled down her cheeks is really very, very visceral and very, very easy to see. Let's get a voice note from Sean.
I watched PMQs when I got home from work last night. To see Rachel Reeves crying, you know, a lot of people will say, oh yeah, she's brave for showing her emotions, but it's not brave, Mike. It's absolutely pathetic. She's the Chancellor of the Exchequer for the United Kingdom of Great Britain, and she's beeling on national television in front of the world. God, our enemies must be laughing their heads off. What's the matter with these people? Why are you so wet? Just because you got roasting off the Speaker or the Prime Minister? If you be good at your job, you don't get bollockings. Simple.
Yeah, I mean, there is some truth to that. If you're good at your job, you don't get bollockings. Well said, Sean. Thank you very much indeed. Front page of the Mail, Sarah Vine, formerly known as Mrs. Michael Gove, says Rachel needed a hug. Instead, Starmer sucked her dry to shore up his own position like the political vampire that he is. A very strange man, a very strange administration, a very strange government, a very strange situation. We're going to try and get to the bottom of it here, but I would bet my bottom dollar with you that Rachel Reeves will not be long for this world as Chancellor of the Exchequer, because she clearly isn't up to the job. You'd have to say Keir Starmer is probably not up to the job either. Coming up tomorrow, he'll have been in charge for a year. And what an absolute mess he's made of this country, this economy, and everything else to do with what used to be called Great Britain. 0344 499 1000. Wes Streeting joining us a little bit later on. Want your questions on the NHS for him. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And here's Tony from Stoke-on-Trent. Morning, Mike. I don't wish harm on Miss Thieves, but those tears were nothing to do with a personal matter. These are students playing at politics. They've got no idea what they're doing, and it's all getting a bit much for them. I believe these are tears brought on by hurty words. Very possibly true. Angela Rayner also is a kind of what you might call a fly in the ointment here, because it looks as though when she was sitting to Keir Starmer's right yesterday, as Rachel Reeves was bursting into tears, you could clearly see that she was not in any way entertaining Rachel Reeves's misery, and instead she was staring straight ahead, sometimes just staring down at the ground, and she clearly was not offering any sisterly love, shall we say, to Rachel. Morning, Mike. You are being overly sensitive, says Ian. If the country was in a great state of affairs, this would be a non-issue. Whatever it is, now the front bench knows the empathy of the esteemed leader. Little girls around the country will be looking up and buying Bitcoin. Well, who can forget Keir Starmer's introduction to his appointment of Rachel Reeves when he decided to appoint her? He was so thrilled with himself. Have a look at this.
It will also be the first budget delivered by a woman ever. That is a moment of pride. When Rachel Reeves stands up, she will be making history. And I can tell you, young women and girls across the country will be watching, they will look up, and they will notice.
And they certainly will. And they'll say, Mummy, why is she crying? Who's upset her? Let's talk to James Price, former government advisor. James, very good morning to you.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
Of all the things that I thought I would be discussing after Prime Minister's questions yesterday, I did not expect to be discussing Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, one of the highest offices in the land, looking for all the world like a broken woman, bursting into tears, sobbing at one point as she sat behind Prime Minister Keir Starmer. I don't even know where to start, really.
No, quite right. Look, on a personal level, it's always sad to see somebody in distress, right? I've known you for a long time. I know you're a lovely bloke, and you would never do this to someone in the way that Keir Starmer has done. I'd like to think that I wouldn't either. And most people at home will be empathising. People going to work will be empathising with Rachel Reeves on a personal level, whatever the issue behind this is. And if there is a personal issue that's happened, again, feel doubly sorry for her. If that's the case, though, the way that these things work is that people around her, her team, should tell journalists, tell the lobby, look, there's something that's gone on, even off the record, explain to them what it is so that they know and they don't kind of pry on all the rest of it, you know, a bereavement or something like that. And then she doesn't appear, right? You don't put her into that horrible environment that's very aggressive and shouty and bawdy and all the rest of it. That didn't happen. And there's a sort of almost, I think, dereliction of the duty of care that Starmer has to his team there, shows he's a bad leader. And then we get onto the actual meat of this, which is just totally unacceptable that a Chancellor of the Exchequer, when the economy is absolutely teetering on the brink, starts crying. What are people in the bond markets, what are people in the wider economy and investors meant to think when they see something like that?
Well, exactly right, because it's the kind of story that you know as well as I do, goes around the world, you know, because it's of interest to people from Azerbaijan to Arizona. You know, because it doesn't matter if they don't know who's involved. But this is the British Parliament. It's known as the mother of all parliaments. It's renowned throughout the world. The Palace of Westminster, an incredible place. Big Ben, you know, the Queen, all of that. You know, you've got an American connection with your wife and everything else. You know, they will see that and they'll go. You know, it's like it's the equivalent of watching the Bulgarian Parliament having a punch-up. You know, they'll go, oh, look what's happening in Britain. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, the woman who's running the country and its finances, is literally sobbing while she's in the middle of doing her job. It's bizarre.
It really is bizarre. And look, I was talking to some female friends and colleagues around Westminster. These are people who really know their onions about the way that Westminster and Whitehall works and all the rest of it. Yeah. And they were spitting feathers about how badly this reflects on women in politics, right? It's one thing to be kind of Winston Churchill and getting all lachrymose and teary because you're reciting some ancient poetry about how wonderful England is and all the rest of it. But this just gives, I think, women around politics a bad name because it plays into all the sorts of nasty stereotypes that some people might want to level at them, right? And it gets to the heart of all this. And when Reeves herself and Starmer and the rest of the Labour Party made such a big song and dance, oh, it's the first female chancellor ever, because of course, you know, they've never had a female leader, and we had one of those 50 years ago. They've never had a female this, that, and the other, and they're trying desperately to make a big song and dance about it, and they go and do this, which I think has probably set back the cause of superb women in politics by quite a long way.
Yes, I mean that's the problem, isn't it? Because everybody understands that, you know, you can have a bad day at work. You might have to, you know, go into the toilets and have a little weep to yourself. And I mean, I'm sure some men do it as well, maybe not to such an extent. But, you know, this is not an ordinary situation. And, you know, it is a bear pit. And you know Westminster well enough. You know, it can be a pretty harsh place. But, you know, there's nobody in Westminster who doesn't know that it's a harsh place. And there's nobody more qualified to understand that than somebody like Rachel Reeves, who was very full of herself when she was, you know, striding the red boxes and everything on budget day, when she was slashing and burning things that people were thinking were absolutely sacrosanct and she should have left alone. You know, she wasn't sorry when she took the winter fuel allowance away from pensioners. She wasn't sorry when she started to go after farmers with inheritance tax. You know, she wasn't sorry for any of those things, and she was quite condescending about everybody who she disagreed with.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And look, I can say this because he wrote it in his memoir. My old boss, Nadim Zahawi, wrote in his book about how when we had early notice that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II had died, and we were just the pair of us sat in his office, in the cabinet office, he had a cry, right, a little bit in the privacy of, oh my God, this totemic thing has happened, and then there's also got the pressure. We're going to have to organise the funeral and be in charge of all of that and all those sorts of things, right? So you know, these things, as you say, do happen. But when you are the finance minister of the 5th or 6th biggest economy in the world, and all the talk is about how difficult the finances are, and you're going to have to break your fiscal rules, you're going to have to put taxes up, and all the rest of it. And by the way, you know, we are currently spending so much more money. This is taxpayers' money, the people at home who can't use that money themselves to go on holidays and things like that, just to service the debt. That's not paying down the debt, just to keep the debt where it is. And by the way, it's getting bigger every year. We're spending significantly more, billions, tens of billions more on that than we are on defence, on the armed forces, right? That's how serious this is. And that bill has just got even higher because the people who would lend us that money are looking at this and seeing that these guys don't know what they're doing. And the worst thing about it, Mike, is that if she does go, Rachel Reeves is still the best they've got.
Yes.
She might have hide on her CV and have half the private sector experience in the real world that she claimed, she's still got more than the rest of that entire cabinet put together. So, God, where do we go from here?
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? I was talking to Chloe Dobbs about this in the first hour, that, you know, there really isn't anybody who's qualified in any way, shape or form economically. I mean, the Telegraph today is speculating that Wes Streeting might be the first guy that they turn to, but he's got no economic background at all. He's coming on the show later on, incidentally, so I'll be asking him about that. But, you know, they literally have no talent. It's like the government of no talents. You know, when they used to talk about, you know, the government of all the talents, or, you know, a nation putting together all the talents, you know, they've literally got none.
No, it's extraordinary. And when you think about how, look, it was the Conservatives, sadly, who I think lost the last election rather than Labour winning it. And with the exception of places like this fine channel, the Labour weren't given enough scrutiny at all through all of it. But it meant they had complete free rein and complete iron grip on who they wanted to select as members of Parliament for the future. And all they've got are these kind of, you know, non-entities who think that Tony Blair is somebody to look up to, right? That's all they've got. And where is the talent? They could have done so much more with it. And all we've got so far from the entire Labour Party are people who want to kill granny, kill babies, give away our territory, put up our taxes, have farmers kill themselves because of the evil things that they're doing there. And, you know, you gave a great list, Michael Reddy, of some of the awful things that Rachel Reeves has done. So once we get past the initial sadness of whatever's happened to her right now and the pressure that she's under, it's just awful, awful things that Rachel Reeves and the rest of her party, whoever it is who might succeed her, have been doing to this country. And they've been doing it with glee and with a smile on their face, not tears in their eyes.
No, exactly right. And we were preparing until yesterday for the big sort of, you know, anniversary that looms large tomorrow. One year in office for Keir Starmer and the rest of his sort of motley collection of people running the government. And she was about to say, and I don't know whether this is going to change over the next few weeks, she was about to reduce the amount of money that people could put into a cash ISA from 20,000 down to 5,000, really going after, you know, middle class, decent, hard-working people who try for occasionals to put some money away in case they fall on hard times, or in case, you know, they might need it for their kids' education, or in case they might need it for a holiday, or anything, you know. She's suddenly going to strip that away from them just because they can't handle the economy.
Yeah, absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I just think that is a completely crackers and wicked and evil thing. People have to remember, people have to realise that the Labour Party, they are a bunch of socialists, right? What is the problem with socialism? Well, amongst many that Mrs. Thatcher pointed out, eventually you run out of other people's money, and that's happening very rapidly here. You've already got loads of millionaires, and I'm not talking millionaires because the house price is high. We're talking cash, liquid millionaires, people who've got loads of money to go and invest and build businesses and do great things. They are fleeing this country. And it's not just them, and it's not just the non-doms, so however much you may not like them, those are people who are rich and successful and invest loads of money as well. It's just ordinary, hard-working people. And if you're not allowed to save in an ISA, right, the lure of going to Dubai or going to Singapore or going to Italy, going to America, goodness me, gets higher and higher and higher. And as those people leave, you might think they're unpatriotic for doing so, but they're just doing what's best for their family, for their business and for their futures. We've got the Labour Party to thank for this. And by the way, the New Statesman magazine, which is the sort of lefty Bible, what have they got on their edition that comes out today? 3 words: just raise tax. Because only damn idea these people have ever got.
It's the only idea they've got, because it's the only way they know to make any kind of growth happen, because they can't make growth happen in the way that they thought that they could, which was just to put public money. I mean, even when Keir Starmer yesterday was listing his great, you know, achievements over the course of the last 12 months, even Parliament groaned when he mentioned GB Energy, because everybody knows, you know, poor old Jurgen, who runs it, has only been in the office, I think, about 3 times in Aberdeen. He spends most of his time in Salford. He doesn't go there very often. He spends most of his time working from home. And all it is a vehicle to put yet more taxpayers-funded public money into private companies so that they can produce more wind farms. I mean, the whole thing is totally mad. And you're absolutely right. The problem for the Labour government is that there is no way out of this. And Dan Hodges has written a piece today in the Mail in which he says, basically, he has to let her go, because either from the duty of care point of view, if she can't handle the job, he needs to let her go from it, because obviously that would be bad for her mental health if she stays in it. But otherwise, if she stays in the job and she can't do the job, then, you know, the markets will collapse and we'll be in a really, really perilous situation financially.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think she could do the smart thing, by the way. She could stand up and say, look, I've tried to get the finances sorted again. The Parliamentary Labour Party wouldn't even allow me to make an incredibly modest, almost rounding error of a £5 billion saving with this welfare bill that they were defeated on earlier on in the week. Right? They're not serious people in my party. Clearly, the Prime Minister doesn't back me. I think that he's wrong and he has treated her abysmally. And she could say, OK, so I'm resigning. Right, and then because the economy is probably going to collapse at some point very soon anyway because of the Labour Party's policies, and she could go, actually, you know what? I tried to warn you. I tried to be the sensible grown-up in the room.
Yeah.
No one wanted to listen because what was one of the backbenchers said after the welfare bill? It's only a couple of £1 billion. I don't understand why the markets are so jittery. Well, there is the problem with the Labour Party. They have no idea how anything works, and they're gleefully smashing up whatever we've got left.
Yeah, it is absolutely tragic to watch. James, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. James Price, former government advisor, there giving his verdict on the Rachel Tears fears for Reeves. What is it all about? What is going on? We'll be talking to Wes Streeting coming up a little bit later on the show. Let's get a voice note from Andy on Rachel.
Morning, Mike. Morning, Chloe. It's Andy from Birmingham, driving down the good old M6 this morning. Lovely day. Well, you've got 2-tier Kia and you've got 2 tiers Rachel Feeds. I don't feel an ounce of empathy for her whatsoever. You know, I save my empathy for the poor old farmers, the poor old pensioners and these businesses that I run that are struggling with national insurance and whatever and costs. If you know, if she can't handle it, she get out. End of story. You know, it definitely wasn't personal in my opinion. She got a rollicking off somebody, whether it was Starmer, Rainer or Hoyle's Travel. I don't know, mate. Anyway, onwards and upwards, bud. Have a good day.
Andy, thank you very much indeed. Andy saying, you know, there's a problem. If you're running a business in this country, you know, Rachel Reeves has kiboshed it. If you've got any employees, you're having to pay more money for them. You're having to lay people off. You're having to try and make ends meet. It's not really working out. I've been asking you for your NHS stories. Here's one from Steve, alive and kicking, he says, in Neath, South Wales. Mike, I recently received a letter confirming an appointment with a consultant to help with my recovery and rehabilitation. It's all a bit strange, as I haven't even seen a doctor for over 10 years. I informed them that they had made a mistake. Then last week I got another letter cancelling the appointment. Are these the appointments Starmer is so proud of creating? Well, I do wonder. I mean, you've got a letter confirming an appointment with a consultant to help with your recovery from something you're not recovering from. That's a bit weird. 7:20.
One year on.
And it's already falling apart.
We did it! smash the people-smuggling gangs.
There is no deterrent.
More and more migrants have come to Britain.
I thought Starmer would definitely last the 4 or 5 years. Now I'm thinking 2 maximum.
And it turns out that Keir Starmer had a wardrobe busier than David Beckham's.
One explosive hour.
U-turn after U-turn.
I'm frightened about how bad they are.
Absolute incompetence and deceit.
1 year of chaos.
Only on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:24. How about this from Michelle? Mike, I've got no sympathy at all for Rachel. I haven't forgotten the pensioners in tears when having to choose between food or heating. She can leave with plenty of cash in her back pocket. Having ruined us all, lives have been lost because of her decisions. I'm hoping for a general election. I think a lot of people are. Keir Starmer, by the way, is going to be in with Chris Evans this morning. He's going to be on there about 8:10. You'll be able to listen or watch the interview on the Virgin Radio app. We'll be bringing you highlights of it, of course, here on Talk. We'll be talking to Wes Streeting in about 20 minutes' time as well. Morning, Mike. Mike here. I wonder today if Rachel Reeves will show some character and stick it to Starmer by resigning. When your boss throws you under a bus for his own inadequacies, it just makes it untenable to stay. Well, the story rumbles on, the mystery rumbles on. We'll try and get to the bottom of it, whether we do or not by the end of the day. Who knows? Let's talk now, though, to Paul Champlina, founder of Landlord Action, because we've got a Talk exclusive right now to talk about. Desperate council officials are offering landlords lump sums of cash and full property refurbs in a frantic scramble to get them to house migrants from asylum hotels. We knew that this was going on, but we didn't know quite the detail of it. One Wiltshire letting agent has told Talk he's been contacted at least 10 times in recent months by the local council. Every time there's a big property with 4 or 5 bedrooms available, they'll contact us, he said. One official said she'd be willing to redecorate and recarpet a 5-bedroom terrace in the town centre if we take a migrant family. This is obviously going to put an awful lot of pressure, obviously, on the business of renting. If you are trying to rent a place, this is going to make it even more expensive and even more tough. Paul, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. I mean, we kind of knew that this was the next stage of the migrant hotel crisis. You know, the government keeps saying we're going to move them out of the migrant hotels, but we know what's going to happen. They're going to move them into private accommodation. And so, I mean, if you're a landlord, many people might not like it and to hear this, but if you're a landlord, it's obviously good business, isn't it?
Well, look, the reality is this. For some time, landlords have taken a bashing. Even Keir Starmer said landlords weren't even working people. You'll remember that about a year ago. Look, the reality is there's 1.3 million people on council waiting list. We have a rental stock crisis, Mike. We're paying, what, £4.7 million a day to house migrants in hotels. And obviously the pledge with this government has been to move them out of hotels. Yeah. I mean, the HMRC did a survey not long ago, only a couple of months ago, and they said that a quarter of landlords are thinking about selling up. It's been a big worry of mine. I've been in this industry for 30 years. I am a landlord as well. And there's massive regulation happening within this industry, as you know, with regard to the Renters' Rights Bill, which was a big initiative that this government have brought in. But, yeah, landlords are being offered incentives by councils because they're so desperate. We have, obviously, a social housing crisis. And it's really tough on normal tenants, private tenants that are looking and vying to rent a property, because I think on average there's something like 16 tenants vying for one property. So obviously what's going to happen is there's companies which have been in the paper like Circa and Mears in Clear Springs, where they've been offering for a period of time 5-year contracts where they would guarantee the rent every month. They will refurb your property. There'll be no rent arrears. And of course, with all the legislation coming in, they're abolishing fixed term tenancies and abolishing the no-fault Section 21. You can't take more than 1 month rent in advance. There's a whole load of changes coming in. And really, the majority of landlords out there, I'd say 85% of landlords out there have between 1 and 3 properties. They're not really professional landlords.
Yeah.
And they just want to make sure their rent's paid on time. The tenant looks after the property. And of course, they can afford to pay their mortgage because, of course, you've got, I think, something like 1.8 million mortgages coming out their fixed term mortgage this year. So it's nothing new about councils offering incentives to try and win over landlords.
But I suppose the difference now is that the numbers of people looking for these kinds of homes has ballooned, hasn't it? Because we've got so many illegal migrants here in hotels. You know, we've got, you know, we're now looking at something like 43,000 that have come in just since Labour have been in charge. So, you know, they're all going to have to be housed somewhere because they're not being sent anywhere, they're not being deported. And at the end of the day, presumably the tenant, technically, if you're taking the council up on this, is the council. It's not the actual individual migrants.
Well, it is, it sounds. And then, of course, we have such a broken system. And, you know, you've been explaining it in many other streams, obviously, on your programme. You have universal credit that came in, which was a debacle at the time, which was brought in by the Tories. Universal credit where the payment of universal credit is sometimes not paid directly to the landlord.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's paid to the tenant, and some tenants can't manage their money, so they end up not paying the money on to the landlord. And then, of course, it puts landlords on taking the more vulnerable tenants, housing benefit tenants. Bear in mind the rents have gone up, so then they get overlooked. There's so many different moving parts, but the reality is, yes, if there is a pledge to take migrants out of hotels, and there's 220 hotels in this country, what's going to happen is they're going to have to be moved to houses, bigger houses or houses of multiple occupation. And the reality is, you know, landlords want their bills to be paid. I mean, you know, I don't know what industry, but the landlord industry gets taxed on turnover rather than profit. Well, that came in under George Osborne in 2017. So there's all these moving factors where landlords' costs have gone up. So I think it will be attracted to some landlords. Of course, there's a bigger political conversation, but yeah, there'll be a less of rental properties, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think so. Good to talk to you. Paul Champlina, thank you very much indeed, founder of Landlord Action there. But, of course, if you're living in any part of Britain where there is an awful lot of rental properties, it's almost certain that you're going to end up having a lot of migrant families moving in because the landlords are simply going to have to go for the money, follow the money. That's always what they say. Let's get a voice note from Clifford on Rachel Reeves.
Morning, Mike. Clifford from Devon. Does that mean that Lindsay Hoyle's going to be arrested for hurty words now that he's upset people? Great show. Cheers.
Well, you do wonder, don't you? Also, people are saying that there was a row between Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner as well. Before the row that she had with Lindsay Hoyle, which may have put her on the wrong straight and narrow as well. Tony from Barrow Furness says, Mike, I had my second hospital appointment cancelled when I arrived at the hospital yesterday. And one from Steph, who says, Streeting says there will be local scans and tests away from hospital. This is just more smoke and mirrors. This is already happening. Breast screening has been done in mobile units for years. We also have a mobile MRI scanner which travels around doing scans in our area. Labour are trying to claim these things as their idea. Well, yeah, I mean, certainly, I mean, I've walked around the back of various hospitals up and down the land, and quite often you'll see a car park that's got some kind of mobile unit in it, so that it's outside of the actual general hospital grounds. But I don't know if that's what he's going to do. I don't know if that's what he means. We'll be talking to Wes Streeting coming up. We've been asking for your stories about the NHS, particularly these 4 million appointments, and many of you have said that you've had so many appointments, none of them have been kept. Is that where the 4 million's coming from? This is, of course, Morning Glory.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:34. I'm Mike Graham. Chris Evans has got the Prime Minister coming in. Hello.
I'm off camera.
He's off camera.
I'm on my knees and
he's
off
on his
camera.
knees, but he's in here first because, you know, we've got to have little chats every now and again. Very good to see you. Good luck with it.
That's my hand.
That's your hand. There it is. Yeah, there it is. There you go. Chris Evans, listen to it on the Virgin app.
Thanks for the advice.
Thank you. No problem. What are we doing? Oh, yeah, we're talking to Maria Caulfield, who is a former Conservative MP, now a nurse, gone back to the NHS, actually, after leaving the bear pit that was Westminster. Maria, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I suppose I really should start by asking you what you made of that Rachel Reeves situation yesterday. I mean, you've worked in Westminster, you've worked in pretty high-profile jobs in Parliament, and it is a pretty rough and tumble sort of place, I would imagine. What was your sort of first reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a brutal place, and if you do badly, it's, you know, a public humiliation, really. But if someone was that upset, you know, the whip should have said, look, you're not going into the chamber today, and, you know, diffuse the situation that way. I felt very sorry for her. But, you know, that's politics. It is a brutal, you know, Liz Truss faced it, Theresa May faced it. Yeah. Politics do face this, and it's not been a great advert, but I felt deeply sorry for her.
It's difficult. It was a difficult thing to watch, wasn't it? You've gone back now into healthcare, which is, I think, where you came from. What made you decide to do that?
Well, you know, the only reason I went into politics was because I joined a campaign to save my local hospital. So once I kind of wasn't an MP anymore, it made sense to go back. You know, it's a great job being a nurse, and you know, the hospital I work in is a pretty good one. So I'm very lucky. And
have you found any differences between how long were you away for, and what was it like when you went back?
So I was an MP for 10 years. I kept my registration, and I would be, you know, I'd go back at weekends and nights to do some shifts to keep my registration. But the biggest thing is just the explosion in staff. Yeah. You know, when the job that I was doing before, there's about 8 or 9 people now doing that job, and so I can see where the money's being spent. Yeah, so there's a lot more bureaucracy than there was when I left the NHS.
Right. So are you saying so they've got more people, but not necessarily it's any more efficient then?
Yeah, definitely. And the systems around it, not, you know, my hospital's a great hospital, but, you know, if you're trying to get someone an appointment with a GP, or, you know, trying to speak to their community team, you know, it's a very inefficient system, even as a healthcare professional, to try and get support for patients.
Right, because, I mean, today we're going to speak to Wes Streeting shortly after we've spoken to you. He's going to be on the show, Secretary of State for Health. He's with the Prime Minister today launching the new 10-year health plan to bring the NHS supposedly closer to home. But one of the problems that I hear about all the time is people saying that they get appointments made and the appointments keep getting cancelled. You know, we hear from Keir Starmer all the time that they've got 4 million more appointments now than they had this time last year. And it may well be that they're making the appointments, but there's an awful lot of people then having those appointments cancelled, and they don't get to see anybody.
Yeah, and this is all about, you know, trying to make sure the figures add up so they can say that they've offered appointments. Yeah. But for patients, when those appointments are cancelled, they're back on the waiting list. But for me, the real issue is most of our patients are very happy once they get into the system. Right. So once they're seen by hospitals, they get their tests done, they get their treatment. The real issue is getting into that system. And so the key crux that matter for me is that we've got to open up access to the NHS, so you're not having to necessarily go through your GP to try and get a referral or to try and get the first test. That, you know, what Wes is announcing today is just really tinkering around the edges. We need, you know, fundamental reform that we tried to start. We tried to get 7-day-a-week NHS going, but we ran into the BMA and the unions. Right. But if you do that, patients are still going to be stuck and having to go to A&E just to get basic treatment, which is absolutely not what the system was set up for.
No. And this morning, Wes Streeting is supposedly announcing this neighbourhood health centre scheme where, I don't know if you've seen this in the papers this morning, they want to have outpatient appointments, mental health therapy and a host of services outside of a hospital so that people don't need to go to a hospital, and they want to have thousands more GPs. Well, it seems to me that sounds very nice and lovely to do, but the reason whenever I speak to doctors that there aren't enough GPs, they say, is because there aren't enough GPs, period, in the country, and there aren't enough trained GPs, and there aren't enough people who can fill those vacancies.
Well, I'd be interested, Mike, if you ask Wes, that, you know, the figures coming out from the BMA is that we instigated training more GPs and more nurses, but 6 out of 10 new GPs who are qualified can't actually get a job in a GP practice. Right. And why is that? Student nurses, the cohort that are qualifying in September, there are thousands around England that can't get a job because there's job freezes in NHS trusts. So where is the money being spent if it's not being spent on new GPs and new nurses? And we're spending the money, taxpayers have spent money to train these people, very highly skilled, very highly experienced people, and then they can't get a job. Right. So then, of course, they leave and we lose all those skills and training. So if they want to do this, all the money we've spent training those staff, they've got to employ them instead of some of these other roles that are in the NHS, which, you know, patients never get to see. You know, it's got to be clinical staff first.
Right. So from what you're saying, by the sounds of it, Maria, is that there's too many kind of admin staff in the NHS and not enough actual sort of front of house, proper medically trained staff. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think, you know, managers make decisions about how that money is spent, and very often it's not spent on clinical staff, and that's part of the problem because, you know, it's great having, you know, team managers and all of these things, but patients need to see doctors, nurses, pharmacists, physios, and you know, that's the crux of the matter. If there's not enough of those people, Wes can want to dream up you know, all sorts of initiatives, weekend openings, evening openings, but unless you've got those staff, it's just not going to work. And of course, you know, Labour spent, you know, over 600 million on that 22% pay rise for junior doctors. So paying existing staff more, which, you know, as a nurse, I'm not complaining about a pay rise. But that money is then, you know, not available to take on the extra staff that we desperately need.
Yeah, and that is a problem. And I'm assuming, because I've been told this before, that the reason doctors can't find work as GPs is because the practices that would be hiring them normally can't afford them.
Yeah, and, you know, the thing is, as a minister and as a government, you don't have direct control over GPs. They are a private business who take on an NHS contract. So we give GPs a lot of money, but we have, you know, as a government or a minister, but you actually have no control over how they spend that. And so that makes it very difficult. It's the same with dentists. There's £3 billion a year spent on dentistry in England. It's not ring fenced. So if the local health authority, the ICB, choose not to spend it on dentistry, there's not a lot you can do about it as a government minister, and it means that patients then don't get dentistry appointments. So that's why it needs to be fundamental reform of the system rather than tinkering around the edges, which, you know, most patients think, well, that's just never going to happen. And unless you change that system and modify it and bring people like the BMA with you, then, you know, this time next year you'll be in exactly the same position.
Yeah, that's the trouble. Maria, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. We must do it more often. Maria Caulfield, a nurse and former Conservative MP, who's gone back into nursing and says, you know, what she's found is there's a lot more people working in her hospital that she's in than there were when she left 10 years ago. But it's actually less efficient. That's one for Wes Streeting, the Secretary of State for Health. He's coming next, right here on Talk.
Well, I feel sorry for her. I think if you've looked at her facial expressions at Prime Minister's questions now over several months, she looks in a state of despair and as if the job is overwhelming her. In a personal sense, I wish her well. I think she's a useless Chancellor, but one wouldn't want anybody to be that unhappy.
Well, I mean, although she's making a lot of other people unhappy with the planned tax rise, you could argue that maybe if she had done 10 years at the Bank of England as an economist and worked as an economist at HBOS rather than in the complaints department and only 5 years at the Bank of England, maybe she would be up to the job better.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 7:45. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. In case you haven't seen it already, there's a big piece in The Sun today, which, of course, I have written, which has got the headline, which says this: a year on, it seems that the biggest job in Britain is simply too big for him. And the man in question, of course, is Keir Starmer, battered Starmer on the ropes. And after what happened yesterday at Prime Minister's questions, you know, there's even more questions to be asked about what is actually going on at the heart of our government. You know, is Keir Starmer bullying Rachel Reeves? Is Angela Rayner bullying Rachel Reeves? Is Rachel Reeves crying because of some personal issue that nobody knows about? Did she have a row with Angela Rayner? Did she have a row with the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle? Who can say? Good morning, Mike, says Luke. I don't want to see anyone upset in public, especially a prominent member of the government. However, Rachel Reeves needs to accept that she can't possibly get free tickets to every concert, and if she really wants to see Oasis, then she needs to enter the Talk competition. Don't cry about it. Stop crying your heart out. Is that not the song? Meanwhile, of course, it is competition time here at Talk. We're giving you the chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets in Manchester on July the 19th. We'll also put you up in a hotel and give you £5 spending money. Here's everything you need to know and how to enter.
All right, arcade, you have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland, for the chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and £5 spending money. Text the word WIN to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. Good luck, yeah? Sorted.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. This from Phil in Peterborough. It's morning, Mike. Here we go again. Another great day at the home of common sense. Labour having a meltdown in full public view. No one knows why. Our Rachel Thieves is crying. Starmer deleting a tweet shortly after. The ministers look like someone stole their smiles. What's really going on? Well, it's a very good question. The front pages this morning have all got stories varying different types of things. The Sun has got the line that says, from Rachel Reeves, I'm under so much pressure. Apparently she broke down in tears shortly after saying that she was basically under so much pressure. In another meltdown day for Downing Street, following the benefits vote fiasco, TV cameras showed her sobbing on the front benches. It is clearly quite extraordinary of a situation. We're told that it's a personal matter, but we're also told that there was a row between Rachel Reeves and the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle. On the front page of The Times, it says that Starmer failed to back her in the Commons, which also was one of the reasons why she started bursting into tears. She told Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, that she was under so much pressure during a brief altercation on the floor of the Commons. But after what happened, she was said to have spooked the bond market, which at one point was in as much freefall as it was when Liz Truss was having problems. Let's talk to Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer at Spiked, because this is really reaching epic proportions now. Brendan, very good morning to you.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Yeah, very well indeed. Much better than it is for the people in Downing Street, who should be celebrating a year in power, but in fact having a pretty miserable time. And I think from most people's perspective, what we saw yesterday in Prime Minister's questions was quite unprecedented, even for the bear pit of the House of Commons.
It was, yes. And, you know, some people are saying that she's going through a personal matter. I don't personally buy that. I think there's something much more political to it.
Yeah.
But that image of her blubbing like a baby in the Commons, that is going to stick on this government, because that is proof that this government is emotionally incontinent, morally incapable, and politically rubbish. That is what we now know about this government. It was a fiasco in the Commons yesterday.
Yeah.
The person in charge of this nation's finances crying her eyes out, Keir Starmer babbling on and giving concession after concession. This is a government that is out of control. 1 year in, they have demonstrated that they are arguably one of the worst governments this country has ever had.
I think it's hard to disagree with that, isn't it? Because everything they do, I mean, I've got a piece in The Sun today about, you know, the year that Keir Starmer has had. And when I was writing it, you sort of forget about all the things that have happened, all the way back to Lord Alley and the free spectacles and the free clothes and the mystery of the Covent Garden penthouse flat and who used it and when it was used and what it was used for and what was going on back at the home of Keir Starmer. Meanwhile, you know, you've had all of the scandal around the various cabinet ministers that have had to resign, the various MPs that have had to go. You know, almost everything they've touched has turned to something not very nice.
Well, I'll have to read your piece because I had the exact same thought. You can forget what this government has done or not done. You can forget all of its rubbishness because there's so much of it.
Yeah.
In the year that they've been in power, there's all those things you've just mentioned. We've had riots. We've had new forms of tyranny with people being put in jail for tweets and Facebook posts. We've had concession after concession. Keir Starmer is constantly climbing down on the issues points he's made or statements he's made or policies he promised to pursue. You know, remember Thatcher when she said the lady is not for turning. Now, people may have been in favour of Thatcher or against Thatcher. That's not my business. But the point is she could stand her ground. She knew what it meant to be a leader. She knew what it meant to run a country and to run a government. Keir Starmer, it's even insulting, I think, to call him a weather vane, because at least the weather vane serves the purpose of telling you know, which way the wind is blowing.
Right.
This guy is just a moral coward and a political amateur, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And the thought of them, do you remember they said when we get back into power, it will be the adults coming back into normalcy, coming back to British politics? It's been the complete opposite of that.
Well, it has been a complete opposite. And just to prove that they are indeed still kind of student activists working, pretending to be MPs, 9 Labour MPs voted against banning Palestine Action yesterday, including Zara Sultana, who I think was shouting in the House of Commons. Let's have a look at this.
I stand with the millions of people that oppose genocide because I am one of them. I oppose the blood-soaked hands of this government trying to silence us. So I say this loudly and proudly on Wednesday the 2nd of July, 2025, we are all Palestine. Order!
No, we're not.
Yeah, we are all Palestine Action. I mean, no, we're not, could be heard. I mean, technically speaking, Palestine Action are now a prescribed terrorist group, I think, aren't they, by law?
You know, Zara Sultana, that is disgusting, because I want to explain to some of your listeners and viewers something about Palestine Action. We all know that they invaded the RAF grounds, and that's what caused this huge controversy. That's a very serious matter indeed. But what people tend to forget is that at the end of May, so we're just talking a few weeks ago, 3 Palestine Action people in black masks invaded a Jewish business in Stamford Hill, which is a very Jewish part of London, smashed it to smithereens, sprayed it with red paint, including the mezuzah on the front door, which Jewish people put on the front door to remind them of their faith. They splashed that in red paint too. And they struck terror into the heart of the Jewish community in Stamford Hill. The people of Stamford Hill said they felt terrified. They said it reminded them of the pogroms in Europe in the 1930s and 40s. Kristallnacht, for example, which literally means, you know, the night of broken glass. Palestine Action visited a mini Kristallnacht on the Jews of Stamford Hill just a few weeks ago. So when Zara Sultana stands up and says, I am Palestine Action, we're all Palestine Action, she's not just aligning herself with protests against genocide, as she stupidly calls Israel's war. Yeah. She's aligning herself with a group that smashed up a Jewish-owned business in Britain in 2025. That is repulsive and that is anti-Semitic.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's also an organisation which is very shadowy when it comes to where the money comes from, because it's not a charity. It appears to be a privately run concern. And the Home Office, I think, even just as recently as last week, was suggesting that they think it might be being funded, at the very least, by the Iranian regime.
You know, it's the whole thing about Palestine Action is so shady. The whole movement, the whole idea of it, the actions they carry out, there's, you know, industrial levels of smugness. These are the most self-righteous plonkers in this country.
Yeah.
They are really, really a nauseating movement. And I think what you have with groups like Palestine Action, it is basically plummy young white saviors who imagine that it falls on their shoulders to save the poor brown people of Gaza from evil Israel. They have this fairy tale version of politics. They have this fairy tale version of the Middle East. It bears no relation whatsoever to reality. It doesn't reflect the fact that this war was started by Hamas when it sent 6,000 armed men to invade Israel and rape and murder Jews. It doesn't take into account any of that. It just has this ridiculous narrative that says Israel is responsible for everything and Gaza is the innocent party. That's not real politics.
No.
That's just self-righteousness dressed up as a political campaign.
Well, it's like Glastonbury all year round, isn't it? I mean, that's what we're facing now with these morons. And just as we're watching the latest sort of outcry from them when they were doing their demonstration in Trafalgar Square the other day, you can see them all wearing these, you know, tax the rich T-shirts. You know, it's all the same crowd. It's the kind of Extinction Rebellion professional, you know, Mummy drives us into the train station in a Volvo, and then we come up to London and demonstrate around for the day. And I mean, I actually heard some of them being interviewed by Theo Usherwood, who was down there a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying, there were some very plummy voices saying things like, well, we're okay, we're quite rich, so we can probably afford good lawyers, but not everybody can. And it's almost like it's a summer sort of pastime for them.
Absolutely. You know, this is not a grassroots movement. This is a movement of largely upper middle class people who are time rich, who've got all the time in the world on their hands, who want to demonstrate their virtue to the world, who've latched onto this issue, who've culturally appropriated the Palestine issue to give themselves a moral boost, who are just, you know, they're in it for themselves and they pretend that they're saving the world, but actually they're not. You know, it's the omnicause, isn't it? It's that constant search for the one cause through which these people might gain a sense of purpose in their lives. A few years ago, it was climate change. Now it's Israel-Palestine, and you have to wear the keffiyeh around your neck to show everyone how beautiful and wonderful you are. So next week, it will be something else. You know, they're constantly looking around for the issue through which they might signal their virtue to the world. It's such a lame form of political activism.
It really is, but as we've said, you know, the fact that 9 Labour MPs have voted against banning them tells you everything you need to know about the state of Labour as well.
Well, you know, let's not forget that a few years back, someone reminded us of this online yesterday, some Labour people voted against banning Al-Qaeda. You know, this is the kind of world we live in. There's currently a movement amongst some so-called pro-Palestine activists. There's currently a movement to de-proscribe Hamas. They want Hamas to no longer be prescribed as a terrorist organization in order that they might express support for it in public. You know, I think this week has been a mask-off week for the so-called pro-Palestine movement, because we've seen them chanting for death to the IDF at Glastonbury. We've seen that chant taken up on the streets across Britain over the past few days. We now see them rallying behind Palestine Action, a movement that has carried out grotesque and I would say anti-Jewish actions. This is, you know, this is their helter-skelter week. This is the week in which the kind of craziness, the derangement, and even the tinge of violence in this movement really became apparent. And it worries me about, you know, I'm worried about Jewish security, how Jews in this country will feel when they see these idiots running riot and defaming the Jewish state morning, noon and night.
I know. It is absolutely extraordinary how we've got to this point in this country, in this day and age. Shocking. Brendan, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Brendan O'Neill there, Chief Political Writer at Spike. Let's get a voice note from Ben.
Morning, Mike. Ben from Frimley here. I think we need to start looking at timelines now for the catastrophic failure of the UK. We need to start looking ahead. I mean, all these things are starting to add up. Small boats, migrant crisis, hostels on every street, you know, in every town in Britain full of single men, NHS on the verge, Rachel Reeves crying in Parliament, Starmer lying after lies after lies, and us just being a complete joke on the world stage now. Trump just thinks we're an idiotic nation. We need to start looking at the timeline now for failure in this country going ahead. I don't think we're far off, mate. Good morning, by the way.
Ben, thank you very much indeed. A serious point. And yes, of course, good morning indeed. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to chew over. Wes Streeting's coming up in the next hour. We'll be talking to him about his new plan, which is to unveil a whole new NHS sort of neighbourhood bizarre situation where basically thousands more GPs and fewer hospital consultants will be trained in an effort to shift healthcare closer to where people live. Well, we'll find out what he knows about the Rachel Reeves situation as well. Alan in Merseyside says she wasn't crying when she took money off pensioners and farmers, was she? And Neil in Dundee, I'd be crying too if I lied on my CV and then had been found out as an incompetent. And Steve in Yorkshire says Rachel Reeves is sending professional women back all over the world. It'll be years before we have another woman Chancellor after this disaster. Her policies have damaged and hurt so many people. I have no sympathy for her. She's out of her depth. Well, you might say they're all out of their depth. Keir Starmer, also out of his depth. He's going to be talking to Chris Evans. It's all happening right here in the News UK building. This is, of course, the home of common sense. You know what to do. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We'll see you with Peter Hitchens after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say.
If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour.
Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. We've got a big hour coming up. Peter Hitchens joins us. Wes Streeting, Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, will be here as well. We're also talking to Ash Regan, MSP for Edinburgh Eastern from the Alpha Party, on what's going on up in Scotland. The big story this morning, of course, all settling around the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, bursting into tears yesterday on Prime Minister's Questions live as it was being filmed and going firing itself around the world. I'm under so much pressure, is what she supposedly said to the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, shortly before you could see her sobbing behind Keir Starmer. Over his left shoulder, that was Rachel Reeves, at one point seemingly uncontrollable when she was crying, as he failed to actually endorse her for the next Parliament, saying that when he was asked, will she still be Chancellor of the Exchequer at the next election, he just wouldn't say. He later qualified that in a BBC interview some hours later, but as of now, the Downing Street line still seems to be that it's all a personal matter and it's definitely not political. But it doesn't look that way, does it? 0344 499 1000. Coming up, as I say, we'll be talking to Wes Streeting. But who can forget how excited Keir Starmer was just because Rachel Reeves was a woman?
It will also be the first budget delivered by a woman ever. That is a moment of pride. When Rachel Reeves stands up, she will be making history. And I can tell you, young women and girls across the country will be watching, they will look up, and they will note it.
Oh, yeah. Fixing the foundations. You can see the sign right there behind him. And, of course, everybody knows that the fact that she is a woman means that she shouldn't be crying. Because now, of course, a lot of people are saying, well, she's crying because she's a woman. And that is the problem. That is a big problem. And whether you believe anything that comes out of Keir Starmer's voice and mouth is another question. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We'll talk about Lucy Letby. We'll talk a little bit as well about the migrant problem in this country. Also, we'll be talking about landlords because they're being offered incredible deals from councils up and down the land. This is a Talk exclusive to refurbish their homes and to refurbish their properties so that they can rent them out to migrants at hugely inflated cost. There's the new migrant tracker, by the way, 43,664. Will it get to 45,000 before tomorrow? The anniversary of 1 year of the Starmer government. I've got a piece in The Sun today in which it says, basically, is it the case, I'm afraid, that the biggest job in the land is just too big for Sir Keir Starmer? This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. So, let us play this for you, because some of you may have been living under a rock for the last 24 hours and you may not have seen it. But let's have a look at Keir Starmer refusing to answer a question from Kemi Badenoch on whether or not the Chancellor of the Exchequer will still be in her position when there's a new election.
Mr. Speaker, she's pointing at me. She looks absolutely miserable. Labour MPs, yeah, she looks absolutely miserable. Labour MPs, they can point as much as they like. The fact is, Labour MPs are going on the record saying that the Chancellor is toast, and the reality is that she is a human shield for his incompetence. In January, he said that she would be in post till the next election. Will she really?
Prime Minister. Well, she certainly won't. Mr. Speaker, I have to say I'm always cheered up when she asks me questions or responds to a statement, because she always makes a complete mess of it and shows just how unserious and irrelevant they are. But she talks about the black hole. They left a £22 billion black hole in our economy, and we're clearing it up. And I'm really proud, Mr. Speaker, that in the first year of a Labour government we got free school meals, breakfast clubs, childcare, got £15 billion invested in transport in the North and the Midlands. We're cutting regulation, planning and infrastructure is pounding forward, building 1.5 million homes, the biggest investment in social and affordable housing, and of course, Mr. Speaker, the 3 trade deals. Remember the ones that they couldn't get, including the US trade deal. On Monday, those tariffs came down. That secured the jobs at JLR. That's who we care about on this side of the House.
How awful for them.
She then says, can we blame how awful for the Chancellor that the Prime Minister couldn't say that she would be still in a job. He later then said that she would. Let's talk to Peter Hitchens, columnist, of course, at the Mail on Sunday. Peter, very good morning to you.
Morning.
So, I mean, you've been round the block a few times down in the Prime Minister's Questions. Ever seen anything like that?
No. I have to say, I just did feel, beyond all politics, very sorry indeed for Rachel Reeves. I have no sympathy for her politically at all, but the idea of being caught by cameras in a state of complete distress, it's just very, very sad, and human sympathy must go out to the person involved. I have no idea what the reason is for it, so I'll keep my counsel about that.
Yes,
but it's an awful thing.
It's an awful thing, and I mean, you know, there will be those who
being in misery.
Yeah, and there will be those who will say, well, you should leave her alone and we shouldn't talk about it. But in fact, the fact is that the market's moved as a result of it. Yeah. And you know, the indebtedness of this country went up as a result of it. So it's quite an important thing, I think.
Oh, I don't deny any of that, and it absolutely so. And there's something obviously seriously very wrong at the heart of this government anyway, which enables people to put a political interpretation on what happened. It may or may not be justified. As I said, we will probably never know what it was really about. But in fact, it would have been perfectly permissible for the Prime Minister to have been in tears yesterday, given...
Well, we can all be in tears by the end of the week.
I decided long ago that the only proper response to all this was to laugh. Otherwise, I would be constantly weeping and using up huge wads of handkerchiefs every day. But it's much better to laugh at it, because it does make a difference whether you laugh or cry to what happens. And there's a limit to the amount of crying one can do. It's dehydrating. But look, this is a government in the most tremendous mess, because it's got to the stage where so many Labour governments, and indeed recently Tory governments, have got to where it's run out of other people's money to spend unwisely on things that it shouldn't be spending money on, and it is therefore hurtling by its own volition towards what may be one of the worst economic crises in our history.
Yeah, and it's getting worse.
Well, I'd be crying if I were them.
Yeah, and it's a crisis of their own making. By the way, for those of you who are watching, you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, Keir Starmer's actually being interviewed by Chris Evans, just down the hall from us here. He's not coming in here to see us, by the way, but never mind. I'd rather be talking to you, Peter.
You must be heartbroken.
I mean, I'm absolutely devastated, but we'll get...
You could have a quick cry now about that.
I could burst into tears and see if that does any good, but apparently it doesn't affect him, because he didn't seem to be very sympathetic to her. Let's talk about something else which you've been writing about this morning. Lucy Letby, once again. The story, funnily enough, there's another story in The Sun this morning saying that there may be more murder charges coming her way, not necessarily as a result of this latest inquiry. But it's been a weird week for this story, hasn't it?
Well, it's extremely strange. First of all, this pitter-patter of tiny little stories. There was some nameless prison officer who said that when she was first brought into prison on remand for her long-delayed trial, he didn't think she was distressed enough. So maybe that
I thought that was really odd, that story.
It's extremely odd. Where do these things come from?
Yeah.
And then there was another one about how she was getting special treatment in prison, and perhaps too many Snickers bars or some such. I have to explain to people that someone in her position in prison, if not put on any kind of special regime, will very quickly be violently assaulted by other inmates, and that's the way it is. And quite frankly, I wouldn't have thought any number of Snickers bars would compensate for being locked up until you die.
Yeah.
Slow motion death penalty, which are a liberal establishment which lacks the courage to execute people, is quite prepared to kill them in slow motion, minute by minute and inch by inch, and consider itself humane while doing so. Actually, I think it's fantastically cruel. Even if she's guilty, it's cruel. If she's not guilty, it's almost beyond bearing to imagine what it must be like for her.
Yeah, exactly right.
I constantly stress people ceaselessly misrepresenting me on this, including I think colleagues of yours. I do not say that she is innocent. I have no idea whether she's innocent or not.
No, I think I've certainly...
The conviction looks unsafe to me, and therefore it needs to be reopened.
No, I've always absolutely represented you in that way.
I know you have,
That's what, and if there's anybody else not doing that, I shall have a word with them. But, I mean, you know, I'm sort of with you as well. I don't know if she's innocent or not. I haven't seen all the paperwork. I didn't sit in the courtroom. I didn't see all the evidence, but I certainly know that some of the evidence that was presented, which did get her convicted, now seems to be in an awful lot of doubt. Not least just the one aspect of her, not being alone when they said she was alone, and the fact that the door, security thing didn't work properly.
The door swipes were backwards and indeed didn't come properly before court. There have been important witnesses who've turned out to be, how shall I put it, mistaken about their recollections and about whether she called for help on certain circumstances. It's all, and then you have this great panel of some of the most distinguished neonatologists in the world saying, as far as we can see, there's no crime taking place. The problem is that the Countess of Chester Hospital is a complete mess and should be shut down. And that also seems to be important. Plus the statisticians who say, honestly, this idea that just because the duty roster show being present a lot is not evidence that she's a murderer. And I would always go back to this. I stick to it to anybody who maintains that they think they know she's guilty. Just name one piece of objective evidence that she ever did anybody any harm. And now we've got this this announcement of the arrest. Though interestingly, not the charging of three senior bureaucrats at the Countess of Chester Hospital, where the alleged killings took place. And then we have more talk, and this has been going on for some time, I have to say, it's not particularly new, more talk that there will be new murder charges, or maybe new murder charges against Miss Letby at some time in the future. To which I would respond, I'm constantly told that by objecting to the refusal of the appeal court to hear an appeal from her, I'm constantly told that by making any kind of campaign against this, I'm upsetting the parents of those children who Miss Letby supposedly harmed or killed. Well, I would hate to be the author of any distress to those people, and if there were any way of raising this without doing so, then I would. But isn't it odd that it's perfectly permissible, apparently, to start talking about new charges? Right. Which will undoubtedly greatly distress the parents of the children involved in those charges.
Yeah, because there would inevitably be...
By the way, to Mr. Streeting, when you see him, because he's been very stringent on one of your so-called rival radio stations some months ago about people upsetting the parents by asking for the case to be reopened, asking whether he thinks that, given that Ms. Letby is now in prison until she dies, what is the high judicial and justicial purpose of finding new charges against her? What is there in this that justifies the distress which this will cause to the parents of the baby? She will now, if these charges go ahead, be accused of harming or killing.
And also, why were the people who made the arrest so absolutely sure that they had to make out that this has nothing to do with Lucy Letby? Therefore, it is completely unconnected. Therefore, you should not draw any conclusions. Well, it's not unconnected, is it? It's clearly not unconnected.
Well, it can't. If after all, the Criminal Cases Review Commission asked the appeal court to reopen the case, and if by any chance, which I wouldn't put very strong hopes in, if by any chance the appeal court listens to what's been said over the past couple of years and actually in some way reopens the case, either by calling a new trial or by quashing the conviction. If that happens, particularly if they quash the convictions, then what will these charges of gross negligence manslaughter be about? Because what will then be said is that there wasn't a serial killer lurking in the Chester Hospital at all, but it was something else was going on. Perhaps the thing which the Xu Li panel says is going on, which is that the hospital was very badly managed, in which case you have a very different set of things you would need to investigate. As I say, I don't. It's just relentless. But fundamentally, it looks to me like a criminal justice system which really very much does not like to be challenged, does not like to even consider the possibility it might have made a mistake. Now, why are they like this? Right. They know from experience. I mean, we in newspapers, we don't like admitting mistakes, but we have to do it because, first of all, it happens sometimes, and we won't set our house in order unless we admit it. And secondly, we know it happens. It's pathetic to say we never make mistakes and to be rigid about it. The criminal justice system in this country would be a good deal better, in my view, when you consider the cases like the Andrew Malkinson, wrongly imprisoned for, I think, 17 years for rape he didn't commit, and of course the scores of sub-postmasters who suffered terribly. If it would admit, yes, we do get things wrong, and be much readier and more open to the possibility that this has happened, and that therefore it needs to be put right. There's a rigidity in this, a feeling deep in the minds of both police and courts, it seems to me, that any challenge to anything that they do can't really be considered, and I just think that's a mistake.
Yeah, I think you're right. We've got to leave it there. Peter, thank you very much indeed. I'll see if I can get that question into Wes Streeting when he comes on. Columnist at the Mail on Sunday there, Peter Hitchens, of course. Mike, great start to your show. Rachel Thieves will never cry as much as the relatives of the farmer who took his own life recently due to her inheritance tax policy for farmers. What comes around goes around, says Warwick in Devon. This, of course, is Morning Glory. Back after this.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel. Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 21 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course, and it'll be time for Julie Hartley-Brewer. We've got lots going on this morning. Obviously, all the front pages covered in pictures of Rachel Reeves in tears yesterday at Prime Minister's questions. Right now, we're going to talk to Wes Streeting, Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. The Prime Minister and Wes are launching the government's 10-year health plan to bring the NHS closer to home. According to the Telegraph, it's about a neighbourhood health service that they want to create. Wes, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. I've got to kick off really and ask you about Rachel Reeves. Is she all right?
She is, and she'll bounce back. I think there will be lots of people watching this morning who will think of times where something's been going on in their life, and when you go off to work, you don't just leave your problems at the door. And what makes us different as politicians is that often we're not only at work were on show, and that's what you saw yesterday. But that she is tough, she will bounce back, and it's because of Rachel's leadership as Chancellor. We've seen interest rates fall 4 times, wages are finally rising faster than the cost of living, and also we've got the fastest growing economy in the G7. So lots done, lots more to do. For the avoidance of any doubt, Rachel Reeves is here to stay, and she'll be Chancellor for many years to come.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, though, she's not like everybody else, because when she has a bit of a cry at work, it moves the markets. The pound dropped 0.9% against the dollar, 0.7% against the euro. And at one point, the sharpest sell-off of gilts was going on since Liz Truss's 2022 mini-budget. So she's not really like everybody else, is she?
Well, as a matter of rule, we don't talk about movements in the markets as government ministers, but I think what is beyond doubt is that Rachel Reeves enjoys the confidence of lots of business leaders, lots of investors, because they can see that she's prepared to make the tough decisions, the right decisions, not just the easy and popular decisions, and those are qualities that you need in a Chancellor. And look, as for Liz Truss, I mean, I've never seen such a happy warrior. She was cackling away in the House of Commons while she was delivering with Kwasi Kwarteng a mini budget that crashed the economy. So I know which one of the two I would prefer, and that's why we're lucky to have Rachel Reeves as our Chancellor.
Well, you say that you're lucky to have her, but, you know, her plan, which was to get the welfare bill through to save £5 billion, has been roundly rejected by your own party. And so now she hasn't got that fiscal headroom that she was supposed to have. And so the economy, by any measure, is going to be in a worse place in a couple of months' time than it is now, isn't it?
Well, we all know that the welfare system needs to be reformed, and even people who were worried about how we were going about it and the timetable for reform agree with the principles that sit behind it. So we do have a revised timetable now, and that will require some different choices in the budget later this year, which Rachel will set out. But we are absolutely determined to reform our welfare system so that it's there for people when they need it, to reduce waste and fraud, and also to make sure it's sustainable for the long term.
But nobody's yet answered the question whether we've got the money to pay for it, the way that it currently is.
Well, as with any budget, there are broadly 3 options available to the Chancellor: spending the proceeds of growth, raising revenues, or finding savings. And Rachel will do what Chancellors do in the right way, which is in the round make judgments later this year based on the circumstances of the time. But we will absolutely be driving forward with welfare reform, because the underlying issues and challenges for the welfare system haven't changed. What there has been is a lively, shall we say, discussion between Labour MPs and ministers about how we were going about it. And it's fair to say we were trying to go at a pace that meant we didn't take everyone with us, and that's what's fundamentally changing.
I promise I'll get you onto the NHS in a minute, but just to state, just one final question on Rachel Reeves. Do you know what Rachel Reeves is upset about?
No, I know it's personal, and it's nothing to do with work. And you know, I take Rachel at face value, and I do think that you know, we're in public life, but we are also entitled to a private life, and there are reasons why we will not always want to talk about what's going on in our lives outside of work, and I think we're entitled to that privacy.
Yes, no, I don't disagree with that, but several people are telling different stories. You know, there's one suggestion that she had an argument with Lindsay Hoyle just shortly before Prime Minister's questions, and she had another argument with Angela Rayner over the welfare bill. So there is some professional kind of crossover, isn't there?
Yeah, it is categorically untrue to say that Rachel had a row with the Deputy Prime Minister before Prime Minister's questions, or at one point there was speculation that she'd had a row with the Prime Minister. They hadn't actually had a meeting that morning before Prime Minister's questions. So, you know, let's ignore the tittle-tattle. Rachel's team have been very clear. It's personal, nothing to do with work. That's what we saw yesterday, and she will bounce back. She's a friend as well as a colleague, and she will bounce back.
OK. You're announcing today that you want to turn the neighbourhood NHS service into something more local, basically. How's that going to work, and how are you going to fund it?
Yes, we're going to roll out a new generation of neighbourhood health centres across the country, providing care close to people's home, indeed in people's home. Because if you think about when the NHS was founded and what life was like back then, people would go out to do their shopping at the butcher, the baker, the grocer. Since then, we've had a revolution in our shopping habits with supermarkets, online shopping and now same day, next day delivery. The NHS looks remarkably the same. Now, I think it's bad enough and difficult enough for someone like me who's got 3 major hospitals within 15 to 20 minutes drive of where I live. For lots of people who live in our towns, our villages, rural and coastal communities, those services are a long way away, often by road and often poorly served by public transport. So starting with the areas with the highest levels of need and areas that are most poorly served in our rural and coastal communities as well, we're going to roll out a new generation of neighbourhood health services with more care under one roof. Your GPs, of course, but also your dentists, urgent treatment centres, minor injuries, diagnostic tests and scans, your physios, dietitians, and the wide range of services that we need to get people the right care in the right place at the right time, and also a revolution in patient power. More ease, more convenience, more choice and control. The NHS designed around you, so it feels much more like the other services that we interact with. The NHS app, for example, has got more subscribers than Netflix. I would like the NHS app to be almost as, if not as joyful to use as Netflix.
Well, good luck with that. Thousands more GPs are going to be trained, apparently. I've been talking to doctors over the last couple of days about GPs and the situation in GP surgeries. Apparently there's an awful lot of GPs who get trained who still can't get jobs because it's without your control, isn't it? You can't make, you know, practices hire extra GPs. So how are you going to make that work?
Well, you say that. I mean, within weeks of coming into office, I mean, I saw this problem and I thought it was absolutely crackers that we had qualified GPs who couldn't get jobs and patients who couldn't get GP appointments. So what I did was cut through some of the red tape, found the money, so to employ, and my commitment was an extra 1,000 GPs to the front line within the year. Actually, we've done almost double that, 1,900, but we do need to train up new GPs. We need to make sure that they're paid and able to find jobs. Otherwise, what's the point of training them all? And that is going to be a big part of the workforce plan, because GPs have got a big role to play in the NHS of the future and delivering the neighbourhood health service that everyone deserves.
Yeah, but if there's no, I mean, if you're going to, it's going to be quite a long-term commitment, isn't it? If you're going to train more GPs, people still tell me it's very, very hard to get a GP appointment in lots of parts of the country. They ring up at the 8 o'clock hour and they still can't get one, sometimes for a couple of weeks, maybe a month. That's still a problem at the moment.
Yeah, and I don't dispute that. And whenever I'm reporting back on the progress we've made, like waiting lists at their lowest level in 2 years, or almost 2,000 more GPs onto the front line, it's always with that recognition in mind. There is still so much more to do. And that's why, as well as training up new GPs and getting more people into medical school, including more people from working class backgrounds like mine, we've also got to make sure that we employ the qualified GPs we already have, and also improve the retention of GPs, and also modernise their practice with the technology that's already now available in terms of ambient AI that can do their notes for them, do their letters for them at the touch of a button. If we save just 90 seconds in every GP appointment by automating that bit of their work, we would create time equivalent to 2,000 more GPs. So that's why the plan today really matters, because it's a plan for investment and reform to get the NHS back on its feet, to make sure it's fit for the future, there for all of us when we need it, based on our need and not our ability to pay.
The Prime Minister keeps banging on about all these new appointments in the NHS that keep being made. He said that he said it yesterday, in fact, in the House of Commons. You know, 2 million was the promise in the manifesto, and he said first of all it was 3 million. It's now apparently 4 million new appointments that you've made. I keep being told by people they get made loads of appointments that they get made, but then they get cancelled. Is there some kind of trick going on here? I've got a couple of notes here from people who've sent me messages. I've recently had my annual neurology review appointment cancelled and reappointed 4 weeks later. Is this one of the 4 million new appointments? That's from Jim in Lytham St Anne's. Nikki in Kent says, I had an ear, nose and throat appointment on the 21st of July at Margate Hospital. I had a text the other day to say it had been cancelled. I then got a text the next day to say I had an alternative appointment made for the 22nd of July at the same time. So I get this a lot. A lot of people having appointments made, cancelled, remade. That's a lot of appointments, but it doesn't mean people are being seen.
And just to reassure people, they're not counted in that total. That is a reflection, though, of the state the NHS was in when we came in. And I'm fed up with people being treated like that and being mucked about with their appointments. And that is one of the things that people will start to feel changing over the course of this Parliament, and certainly over the next decade. This sort of practice will go. I want patients to have more ease and more convenience, more choice and control over their care. And, you know, to be honest, that's not just the process, it's the culture of the NHS we need to change, and that's what our 10-year plan will deliver.
All right. Wes Streeting, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. Wes Streeting, Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, there telling us that he's going to fix the system, admitting thereby that it's not fixed yet. So when Keir Starmer keeps talking about fixing the system and having fixed it, he would have a disagreement there from Wes Streeting, who also says that there's nothing wrong with Rachel Reeves and that she'll be back as good as new very soon. He couldn't tell us what the personal problem is. You buying that? 8:32.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 8:35. Rachel Reeves says, Linda, I don't feel sorry for this woman. She's inflicted so much hardship, pain and suffering on the hard-working people of this country. And Phil says the only one looking confident and strong is Angela Rayner, and that's because she has the bloody unions backing her up. Well, we just spoke to Wes Streeting there, who said basically that Rachel Reeves will bounce back from whatever it is that's ailing her. He says he doesn't know what it is, but it's definitely nothing to do with politics. I'm not sure I completely buy that story. Let's talk to Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor. Claire, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Oh, I mean, he's very accomplished, Wes Streeting, at talking, isn't he? He's quite good at it. He doesn't get himself caught up in all manner of things that he could have got himself caught up in. Are you buying this story that it's all personal, nothing to do with politics?
No, not at all. And I think the problem that we have is the scenes that played out at PMQs with Rachel Reeves and tears falling down her cheeks. We were then told about 3 different stories. It was a personal issue. Yeah. She'd had an argument with the Speaker of the House of Commons, or she'd had an argument with a senior cabinet minister. All 3 of those can't hold true at the same time. Right. So all it does is create a vacuum. And for Wes Streeting to say very diplomatically that she is a friend and it was something personal, but he doesn't actually know what it is, that line isn't going to hold until probably about 10 o'clock this morning. I think we'll hear a different version of the story coming through.
Well, exactly right. And if she is as upset as that, because, I mean, you know, as I said, you know, plenty of people get upset at work, and sometimes you have to take a couple of days off, or sometimes you have to go into the loo and have a little quiet cry to yourself. But, I mean, you don't do it in front of cameras getting beamed around the world to such an extent that the markets then get affected by your behaviour.
Well, this is right. She's the Chancellor of the United Kingdom. She sat behind the Prime Minister at Prime Minister's questions, where she was going to be on screen for quite a period of time.
Yeah.
If you are feeling that upset, don't come into the chamber. Go into your office, go somewhere else and say, I'm terribly sorry, I'm not going to make it in today. No, I don't think anybody would have really paid that much attention if she wasn't there. There may have been a couple of questions, where's the Chancellor? But equally, you could have said, oh, I'm sorry, she's in a meeting. You know, that is so much easier to deal with. But here we are almost 24 hours later. All of the front pages have that picture of her on the front. Every government minister is going to be coming up with some kind of story. They need to stop it quickly.
Yeah, exactly right. But as you say, the more the story doesn't really get properly explained, the more legs that the story will then have, because that's what journalists are there for. Journalists will just feed on the story until there's nothing left of the carcass. And I mean, she doesn't look well. She looks in a bad way, doesn't she?
She does. I mean, I do have sympathy. If there is something going on, she didn't look great. She looked defeated. She looked very, very unhappy. I wonder if she wasn't very well.
No, but she looks tired as well. She's got bags under her eyes. You know, she's normally quite well turned out, and she looks as though she's literally just got out of bed.
Yeah, she looks like me sort of first thing in the morning before I put makeup on. But why would you put yourself through that?
Yeah.
I have sympathy in some respects if you are going through something, but you take yourself away from the public domain. You can't then complain that everybody's talking about it if you've surrounded it in mystery the entire time. They should have come out with a story straight away, shut it down, and we would have all moved on. But here we are, and it's going to continue. But she is the Chancellor. She has now caused the markets to be very, very jumpy, which in the economy that we have is no good thing.
No, it's not. And more jumpy markets mean more jumpy chancellors, really, don't they? Because it means that for all of his assurances last night on the BBC, Keir Starmer, that she's going to be here for the long haul and that they're in lockstep together and everything's fine. Well, I mean, they might well go down in lockstep together because, you know, the country is rapidly, you know, going down the gurgler, isn't it?
Well, that's right. And you always have to worry when a Prime Minister says that they have full confidence in one of their colleagues, because inevitably that person is on their way out the door with us not so much as a goodbye. So I think that times are not great in number 10. I think that there is a reshuffle coming, and we are all going to speculate over the summer as to who's going to be on that list. But again, governments need to be able to shut stories down, and the Labour government has shown over the last 12 months that it is absolutely incapable of doing that.
Yeah. Well, I said that this morning as I came in and spoke to Christian, my producer, and I said, you know, the last thing I thought I'd be coming in to talk about on a Thursday morning was the Chancellor of the Exchequer bursting into tears and sobbing, sitting behind Keir Starmer. It's the most bizarre thing you've ever seen.
Well, it is, and you look at all of the front pages, and it is the most horrendous photograph that has been used. But it was the one that's been beamed into homes around the country. Everybody's now looking at it across their breakfast table, on newspapers. It is all over the internet, and it's been turned into memes on social media as well, which isn't a good thing. It isn't going to go away. And it's all very well for Wes Streeting to offer up some nice words and try and placate the story, but you kind of feel sorry for him. He's got a big health announcement. He's now been taken up with dealing with Rachel Reeves. And where's Keir Starmer? Have we not heard from the Prime Minister properly? I don't think we have. He seems to have gone into hiding. It's almost as if he doesn't care.
Right. Well, he's just been on Chris Evans' show literally just 5 minutes ago, so we're going to find out what he said on there. But I don't know yet what he did say, but we'll check it out. Claire, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Claire Pizzle there, talking as a former Conservative government advisor, saying, yeah, it's not going to go away, this story. We'll find out what Keir Starmer said to Chris Evans about the Rachel Reeves scenario. We'll bring that to you. Right now, though, let's talk to Andrew Montford, the director of Net Zero Watch, because we just want to move the dial slightly over to something else that's going on, because, of course, Ed Miliband continues to wreak havoc with his net zero policies, and we keep being told that the electricity prices are going to come down in the winter. Then we hear they're going to go up. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
You've got a tweet out there in which you're explaining exactly what the breakdown of the new electricity price cap is going to be, and it's proving basically that it's not gas that's costing us money, it's the net zero policies that are costing us money.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Ofgem publish a whole batch of spreadsheets breaking down how they've arrived at what the price cap is. And I've spent quite a long time digging into these. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, but eventually, if you keep digging, you get to the bottom of it. And what it shows is that once you've taken inflation out of the equation, the increases in your electricity bills are almost all due to net zero policy. What Ed Miliband is saying is that it's something to do with the price of gas, and that just isn't true. If you want, as I say, once you've taken inflation out, your electricity bill has gone up by something like £280 over the last 10 years. Now, much more in sort of headline terms, but £280 in real terms. Of that 280, 180 is net zero costs, is sort of the subsidies to wind farms, all that sort of thing. On top of that, you have the cost of strengthening the grid for net zero. That's another £50. The contribution of gas is just, it's less than 20 quid. It's almost nothing now. Gas prices have come down. So the message that we're getting from Ed Miliband is essentially disinformation, and we should be calling it out.
Yeah, I mean, how much longer are we going to have to put up with this government just coming out with lie after lie after lie? Because they do it in almost every area. You know, I mean, just yesterday, and I was explaining this to Wes Streeting, you know, Keir Starmer was banging on about how, you know, they've created all these jobs, but actually, no, they haven't created any jobs. They've created what they call an atmosphere, an environment for creating jobs. It's not quite the same thing. GB Energy, another amazing, you know, achievement that they've made, means nothing. It doesn't do anything. You know, it's a waste of space. They keep banging on about 4 million new appointments made. You know, they're not 4 million new appointments. They're appointments that are being made and then cancelled.
Yeah, I mean, we could be talking for hours, couldn't we, about all the lies that have come out.
But I mean, have we sort of entered a new era of politics where politicians just tell lies and expect to get away with them?
Well, I think we've actually been in that era for quite a long time, but I mean, I think this current government are particularly good at it, if you like. But and in fact, it's not just the politicians; the civil servants are doing it as well. Whitehall produces incredible disinformation in the area of net zero. They you shouldn't believe anything that the energy department says about, I don't know, the costs of wind farms or anything. It's just they just make it up because they are, like Ed Miliband, zealots in the cause of net zero and decarbonisation, and they think actually it's a white lie, if you like, to lie to the public about it, and it genuinely isn't. It's causing enormous damage because we're making the wrong decisions about our future because people believe these lies.
Yeah, and I mean, that is the problem, because more and more people, I was talking to Jeremy Carl the other day, he was at his son's school, where they had some BBC sort of so-called comedian making a speech to the kids, talking about net zero as if it was the most important thing in the history of the world, and that they must absolutely press on and fight for the net zero, you know, sort of ultimatum, if you like, because otherwise they would be treated as pariahs in society. And that's still the message in most schools, and that's still the message in most universities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my kids had that as well. I mean, my boys' school brought in, you know, one of the world's wildest environmental activists from Germany, and he was invited to address the whole school. Now, somebody like me would never be allowed in to give the opposite point of view. You know, this is indoctrination. It is not education. And this is true right across schools, right across universities, across, if you like, all the sort of the academic institutions, the media, most of the media, I mean, present company accepted, but the BBC are never going to allow somebody like me to give an alternate view on net zero. I mean, they absolutely would not. They are propagandists, not journalists.
Yeah, exactly right. Shocking state of affairs. Andrew, good to talk to you. Keep up the good fight. Andrew Montford there, Director of Net Zero Watch. Steve in Stoke says, I believe Wes Streeting 100%. It must fly now. I have to feed my unicorns. Paul in Solihull says, notice when Wes was pressed about Rachel Reeves having a dispute with Rayner or Hoyle, he categorically dismissed a row with Rayner, but said nothing about a row with Hoyle. More Labour BS. And Dave says, I just caught the last bit of your interview with Wes Streeting. I've given up listening to these characters as most are full of arrogance, sneering and empty claims and promises. However, one comment did hit home and disturb me. 10 years, 10 bloody years. This is the most depressing and terrifying thing I've heard from one of your shows ever. What, you mean the fact it's going to take them 10 years to fix the NHS? Well, do you remember when Ed Miliband said there was only 24 hours to save the NHS? That was about back in 2015 or something, when he was in charge of the Labour Party. Do you remember that? That was a pretty bizarre time as well. 0344 499 1000. Have we done Ben? Let's have Ben on Rachel Reeves.
Morning, Mike. Ben from Frimley here. I think we need to start looking at timelines now for the catastrophic failure of the UK. We need to start looking ahead. I mean, all these things are starting to add up. Small boats, migrant crisis, hostels on every street, you know, in every town in Britain full of single men, NHS on the verge, Rachel Reeves crying in Parliament, Starmer lying after lies, and us just being a complete joke on the world stage now. Trump just thinks we're an idiotic nation. We need to start looking at the timeline now for failure in this country going ahead. I don't think we're far off, mate. Good morning, by the way.
A very good morning to you, Ben. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, it is extraordinary what is going on. Coming up, Ash Regan's here, MSP for Edinburgh East, and she's just been apparently nominated for MSP of the Year and Political Hero. Well, we get them all on here. We only like the good guys. It's 8:47.
There isn't footage of these massacres because they're not taking place by Israeli
Julia, this
soldiers.
Is just go on any other TV station and you will see live streams sometimes, people being massacred, standing, queuing up for food. It happens.
There is one set of footage which actually shows Hamas fighters. This is from quite some time ago now.
No, that was at another location totally.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't at the location where it was claimed there had been IDF soldiers
somebody
shooting.
who's completely unidentified, probably one of the gangs in Al-Shabaab that the Israelis
not Hamas.
working hard.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 10 minutes to 9. I don't know where the time goes. Craig in Croston says this. Wes Streeting didn't deny the Lindsay Hoyle argument with Rachel from accounts, did he? He didn't really, no. And we're just going to have a quick look at what Keir Starmer said to Chris Evans, where he said he's not going to speak for Rachel. I've obviously talked to her. It was a personal matter, nothing to do with politics or ups and downs of this week. But what he says is, I would say, in politics, you're on show the whole time. Ash Regan's here. Ash, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. Ash Regan, I should say, sorry. MSP for Edinburgh Eastern, and current nomination for MSP of the Year.
Yes,
it's quite good, isn't it?
Very exciting.
What do you make? You're a woman in the public eye, in politics. What did you make of the whole Rachel Reeves situation?
Yeah, so maybe I can give a bit of perspective on that, being a female politician.
Yeah.
I used to be a minister. I think it is fair to say that politicians are under a lot of pressure. I mean, that's for sure.
And she certainly is.
Well, she's in a very, very senior position.
Yeah.
And I suppose there's a couple of things there. Sometimes I think that the public don't like to think of politicians as being human.
Yeah.
They don't expect us to show any human emotion. I think they think we're more like robots or whatever. But in her job, being so senior, and the fact that if she can't command the confidence of the country and beyond, the country's going to suffer.
Right.
That's a factor, obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure she can recover from this.
I don't think she can. But Wes Streeting said to me, just now, well, the thing is, we're all human and we all have bad days. And I said, yeah, but the problem is for her, when she has a bad day, the markets move and the gilt prices go up. And, Britain gets more in debt than it was before. So she's not an ordinary person in that way.
No, she's not. She's fulfilling a role, a very, very senior role.
Yeah.
And to do that, you have to present yourself in a certain way. Obviously, they're briefing out this morning that there was some kind of personal issue. And if that had been the case, something very serious has happened to a family member or so on, arguably you should, go sit in your office, go home if it's very serious.
Yeah.
If you're feeling a bit fragile, don't go and sit on the front bench.
No.
And look visibly emotional. That it doesn't look
There's
good.
any number of reasons why you don't have to be there. I mean, Keir Starmer himself wasn't at the last 2 PMQs, was he?
Exactly.
Because he was away in, the G7, or he was away at the NATO summit, or he was doing whatever, So there were different ways of organising it. Let's have a quick look. We've got a quick clip here from Keir Starmer, who was on Virgin Radio just now with Chris Evans.
I actually personally didn't even appreciate it was happening in the chamber, because I came in and I've got questions being fired at me in PMQs, and so I'm sort of constantly up at the dispatch box and down. But I think we just need to be clear. It's a personal matter, and I'm not going to breach Rachel's privacy by going into what's a personal matter for her.
So he didn't even notice. That's great, isn't it? Typical bloke. The woman he claims he's in lockstep with, because that's what he said on the BBC last night. He's in lockstep with this woman. They're practically one person. He doesn't know that she's upset, and he doesn't even notice that she's sobbing right next to him.
Well, the other
personal
issue could be, of course, her performance in her role.
Yeah.
And that perhaps he has also said privately to her that he's wanting her to consider her position. That seems the most likely.
It does, doesn't
speculating.
it? Because, she's obviously doing a terrible job. There's no question about that. And as much as it was uncomfortable to watch her in that sort of state of emotion, you can't get away from the fact that, the economy is in a terribly bad place, largely due to an awful lot of the measures that she's introduced.
Well, presumably she's introduced those measures with his agreement, but then the option open always to the person at the top is to sacrifice someone else in order to protect themselves. I'm sure he will be thinking along those lines.
Right.
Perhaps if he or someone else has communicated that to her, maybe it all just became too much, and when he wouldn't back her publicly in the chamber at that point, that it just got too much for her. So that seems like a likely explanation.
Yes, because also you'd think as well, if there was an issue that was so personal that people would know about it, Kemi Badenoch wouldn't have been quite so aggressive either, because she was the one who said, she looks miserable. And just before that, she was sort of pointing and waving at Kemi Badenoch. So it's all very mysterious.
It is.
But as you say, it's not going to go away. You're down here for a series of meetings. You were in the House of Lords yesterday. Tell us about that.
Yes, so we're actually in the House of Lords doing meetings when Rachel Reeves was crying in another part of the building, which, as you can imagine, caused... it was the talk of the steaming yesterday in Westminster. So I'm meeting up with people to discuss my unviable bill, which is to reform prostitution laws in Scotland. The Scottish Government at the moment appear to be saying that they don't back it, which is odd, I think, when it certainly is SNP party policy, and it is very much in line with what the government is putting out. It says, the government are very clear, always saying, they're against violence against women and girls. This is violence against women and girls. This is a proven effective way of combating that. I really can't see how they can possibly say that they're against violence against women and girls and then not support the laws that I'm proposing to change.
Yes. And so what law would change specifically that would really make a difference to you think?
So it's called the Nordic model. So many countries around the world have done it. The first one to do it was Sweden. So the idea is that you shift the balance of criminality and the shame, if you like, from the women who are selling sex onto the men who are buying. And the reason we do that is it creates a deterrent effect then. it shrinks down the market of prostitution, because prostitution is such a harmful system for women and girls that are often forced into it, that many of them go on to develop complex PTSD. We have studies on this showing that women that have been through prostitution end up with PTSD at rates higher than combat veterans and consistent with victims of state torture. So it's on us really to follow our international obligations that we have as a state. Obviously the UK would be the duty holder there, but the Scottish Government need to take their responsibility for this as well. And then what that does, and it's proven to do this by the international evidence, is it also then reduces the inflows of sex trafficking into your country. And surely everybody wants to get behind that.
You would think so. So it's not about legalising it, because I remember Margaret MacDonald many years ago was all about having a sort of a designated red light district and making it actually legal. So that's not a
well, that hasn't worked. I don't know if you've ever had anyone on talking to you about Holbeck and Leeds. So they tried that there. They called it, I think, like a tolerance zone. It became absolutely horrendous. So any woman or girl who was walking, because it was a residential area that they did it in, that was walking along that area was getting harassed. It would have felt like a very unsafe, horrible place to live, with sex buyers driving around all the time, that sort of thing. So they've actually reversed that in Leeds. They decided it didn't work and they've reversed it. Under my proposals, the women would be decriminalised, because we conceptualise this as violence against women. Many of the women and girls that go into prostitution are not doing it by their free will. They're often forced into it, or they go into it because the circumstances around them are just so desperate that it seems like the only choice they have. Many of them have been through the care system, and you'll understand the congruence there with the Asian grooming gangs. That is often a cohort of young girls, very young, sometimes 13, 14, who can become victims of their lover boy method, where they're groomed and very slowly.
And is the Scottish
moved
Government
into
doing much
prostitution.
about that? Because I know there's been some girls who have spoken to, certainly to us and to others, some of the victims who have said they were taken around the country, and some of them were taken to Scotland.
That's very common. So
Edinburgh,
the pimps will move the women and girls around the country, because sex buyers want fresh meat all the time, so they'll move them to Aberdeen, then they might be in Leeds or London the next week. Sometimes these women don't even know which city or even which country they're in. They have their documents taken away from them, and they're surveilled at all times. They're not able to walk out and get a coffee. They are just being watched and having violence meted out to them at all times, either from the pimps or also from the sex buyers.
So what stage is your bill at right now?
So it's at the very beginning of stage 1. So the Scottish Parliament has to go through 3 stages. I gave evidence to the Criminal Justice Committee last week. The committee have now issued a call for evidence. So anybody that's got, and you don't have to be Scottish, anyone that has an interest in this or has expertise in this area can contribute to that. And then they'll start taking evidence, and then it'll go to a vote at stage 1, probably in October or November. And I need a simple majority. And if I can get that, I can progress on to the next stage.
Okay. And you've got an election coming up next year, haven't you?
We do. So timing is tight for sure. So the Scottish Parliament will go into, mothballing, if you like, around about the middle of March, in order to give us that 6 weeks run up to the election in May.
Okay. And how's the SNP feeling about all that?
About the election? They're not, I think, probably in the place that they would want to be. The polls are very much in flux. Reform are showing
really well.
They really are there, well into the 20 points. So it looks as if there's going to be a big shake-up in terms of the membership of the Scottish Parliament in the next session.
Which is going to be fascinating. Great to see you, Ash. Thank you very much indeed. Ash Regan there with her take on what's going on up in Scotland, but also on Rachel Reeves and, of course, her own bill. We've got much more to do. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be filling you in with all sorts of Dan Hodges commentary. He's written a great piece today asking about what is the future for this government and what is the future for Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, because it doesn't look terribly bright, does it? Netflix has 300 million subscribers. Mike says Alexis in Stratford. Streeting says the NHS app has more subscribers. Is he happy providing healthcare to 300 million people? No wonder we're bankrupt. That's a very good point. Alison in Richmond says Wes Streeting talks about a plan for investment and reform. Reform? Does he know something? I hope so. And Carl from up north says if Reeves' crying was personal, why would you go into the chamber looking like that? Whatever happened in Parliament is if it's being personal, it's a lie. We'll be back after the news. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week, the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people, because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humsley Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar.
Hello,
and
lady.
unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's plank of the week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Mega...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 4 minutes past 9. Welcome to the home of common sense, the world headquarters, indeed, of common sense. We've been talking to Wes Streeting earlier on. Dan Hodges is going to be here in this hour. He's got plenty to say about the state of the nation and the state of this government. We've got him talking about it in the Mail today. We'll be telling you all about what he makes of it. Mel Stride here as well, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. The big story this morning is still what on earth is going on with Rachel Reeves. So just had Wes Streeting saying that it is a personal matter. They won't be drawn on anything more than that. Keir Starmer said the same thing to Virgin Radio when he was on with Chris Evans just a few moments ago. But there's no question that Rachel Reeves did, as Kemi Badenoch say yesterday, looks miserable. She was in tears. At some point she was sobbing, seemingly uncontrollably. Keir Starmer has admitted that he didn't even know she was crying. What does that tell you about the state of the man? I mean, after all, he's told us that he's in lockstep with her. He's told us that they are practically one individual person. They're that close. They believe in the same things. They work together all the time. They do everything together. How did he not know she was upset? How is that even possible? Sounds bizarre, doesn't it? Because let's not forget how proud he was when he first announced that she was going to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
It will also be the first budget delivered by a woman ever. That is a moment of pride. When Rachel Reeves stands up, she will be making history. And I can tell you, young women and girls across the country will be watching, they will look up, and they will notice.
Yeah, they'll certainly notice. What's she crying for? Why is she sobbing? You know, what's going on? It's a personal matter, apparently, we are told. 0344 499 1000. Also, we've got lots and lots of questions about the NHS and the idea that Wes Streeting wants to create a new kind of neighbourhood health service so that you won't have to worry about going to a hospital, you won't have to worry about going to a GP surgery. You can just go to some kind of neighbourhood health centre where you can also get debt advice, employment support and weight management. Apparently, he's going to do away with fat people. Well, good luck with that, mate. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This, of course, is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Why is it Starmer doing the media round every morning regarding the daily illegal migrant channel crossings rather than wretched breakfast clubs fiddling while the UK is burning? Have a great day, says Willow from Lausanne. Oh, very nice. A very exotic place to be. Of course, 43,664 is the new up-to-date migrant tracker. They've certainly smartened their ideas up. They're now actually updating it, as I've been suggesting. I reckon it hits 45,000 by the end of the day tomorrow, which will mean 45,000 in this country, new illegal migrants since Labour got into power all those months ago. 12 short months ago. Do you remember what it was like when we actually had a reasonably competent government? I know you all thought that the Tories were useless, and they were, but they were not. They weren't as incompetent as this lot, were they? They really weren't. Just before we speak to Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, let's have a listen to what Keir Starmer had to say to Chris Evans just a few moments ago on Virgin Radio.
Well, I'm not going to speak for Rachel. I've obviously talked to her. And it was a personal matter. And given it's a personal matter, it's not for me then to breach Rachel's privacy on it. It's got actually, contrary to what people may think, nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with the ups and downs of this week or her relationship with anybody in the Labour Party, purely personal. But what I would say is she is an excellent Chancellor. She will be Chancellor for a very long time to come, into the next election and beyond it. And she and I are absolutely committed to our fiscal rules and the economic stability that is so important for this country.
Yeah, unfortunately for him, the market's actually moved as a result of Rachel Reeves bursting into tears. The pound dropped 0.9% against the dollar, 0.7% against the euro, and at one stage the sell-off of gilts was so high that it was the biggest thing seen since Liz Truss's mini-budget in 2022. So the market is not confident. The economy is not going well. And the worst news, I suppose, of all, to give you Mel Stride this morning, very good morning to you, is that apparently Rachel Reeves is going to be in for the long haul.
Well, that's what we're told today, Mike. That's the latest, is that the Prime Minister's going to have her there until the general election. It's just a great shame that when he was asked that question by Kemi Badenoch at the dispatch box at PMQs, he chose not at that point to apparently stand behind her at all, which is one of the reasons why the markets reacted the way that they did. And you're right, you know, when bond yields go up, it sounds a rather abstruse thing for most listeners, but what it actually translates to is in higher borrowing costs for our country, and we all end up paying for it.
Yeah, exactly right. And this is the thing. I spoke to Wes Streeting earlier today, and he said, you know, we all have bad days at the office, and, you know, we've all got our right to private life and all that. Well, that's all very well up to a point, but not when you're the Chancellor of the Exchequer, not when you are sitting there being filmed and having that film beamed around the world, when you represent the chief of the Exchequer of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And whenever you start bursting into tears, I'm afraid it makes the markets very jittery.
Well, it does, but it speaks, I think, Mike, to a broader issue here, which is the utter mismanagement of the economy. And we have seen that in the last 24 hours or so around welfare. A welfare bill, which whilst it was going through the second reading debate, got suddenly gutted of just about everything in it.
Yeah.
In order to stave off a rebellion at a cost of about £4 billion. If you add that to the U-turn on winter fuel payment, that's another 1.25. You know, you're up over £5 billion. That money's going to have to be found. And I'll tell you how it's almost certainly going to happen, is that come the autumn, at the budget, the Chancellor will be putting taxes up again. And that's going to be borne by hard-working people right up and down our country, I'm afraid.
And the problem we're going to have now, and I said this the other day, is that, you know, because of the backbench Labour MPs, the lefties in the party, you know, we can no longer have a conversation about whether people are actually in receipt of benefits that they shouldn't have, you know, because their line basically is that everybody who's on PIP deserves it. when clearly the system is broken and there's far too many people on it getting far too much money when they shouldn't be getting. I mean, I've had a litany of people writing to me over the last few days telling me about members of their family who are on it, various other people who shouldn't, that they know who are friends of theirs who are on it. You know, there's millions of people on this stuff, this kind of subsidy from the government, and it's quite addictive, and it needs to be stopped somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to arrest the rise in the welfare bill. When we were in power and I was Secretary of State at Work and Pensions, we saved $5 billion from that bill, and the OBR said that almost 500,000 people, fewer people, would be going on to those long-term sickness and disability benefits. And we had big plans for much bolder reform going forward. Yeah. All of it well thought through, rather than scrabbling around at the last minute to find some cash because they run out of it, which is what the story is around Labour's so-called welfare reform. But you know what, Mike? The biggest problem that was demonstrated over the last 24 hours or so is this government does not have the capacity to deliver on tougher decisions, okay? So when it comes to, we hear all this story about they're going to sort the health service out, etc. Well, you've got to deliver, you've got to grip, you've got to, you know, have a united parliamentary party, and they have demonstrated that that is just simply not there.
Yeah, well, again, when I asked Wes Streeting how he was going to fund this new neighbourhood and health service, he didn't really answer it. You know, they specialise in not answering questions. They specialise in banging on about, you know, achievements like, you know, 500 breakfast clubs in Britain and, you know, 4 million appointments for the NHS, which I'm very reliably informed by most of my listeners and viewers that are appointments that are made and then cancelled.
Yeah, well, if you look at the appointments, actually, you'll find that that's not dramatically different from the general situation that there's been over the last couple of years, for example. But look, the big points here are that this government has mismanaged the economy. You know, it talked down the economy when it got into office. It taxed the living daylights out of businesses. It borrowed and spent a lot of money. It stoked up inflation, kept interest rates higher for longer. We're now paying on our national debt, Mike, about 100 billion a year. That's twice what we spend on defence. And if you add all those things up, and then the anemic growth that we've got in this country as a consequence, you know, you're heading for ever more financial pressure. And we're going to see that, I'm afraid, in the autumn, almost certainly by way of higher taxes on hardworking people up and down the country, because this government has taken the wrong choices. Yeah, and I think people are going to be even more unhappy about that than ever. Good to talk to you, Mel. Thanks very much indeed. Good to see you. Mel Stride there, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, saying that more taxes are coming. I don't think we can pay any more taxes, can we? There's going to have to be some kind of popular revolt in this country. This from Kevin in Southampton. Mike, like everything this government do, they talk a good game, but on the ground, it never actually happens. My appointments are regularly cancelled and then rebooked. And Nick says this, morning Mike, what absolute claptrap Streeting is talking. If it was a personal matter, she wouldn't be at work. More lies. She shed no tears when she screwed the pensioners, so good riddance to her. Well, the question is it good riddance to her? Here's Keir Starmer talking on Virgin Radio about keeping Friday nights free.
I think you must have asked me how are things going to change, you know, and I said, well, the one thing I'm going to try and do is keep Friday evening free, because Vic and the kids and I always try a Friday evening, just the four of us. I think it's really important. And I think I said to you, I'm going to really try to keep that 6 o'clock slot. And then there was an onslaught where everyone said, outrageous, he won't do any work as a Prime Minister, etc., etc. It was all a bit silly, but we were in the middle of an election when lots of silly things are said. But I can report back a year on in that my attempt to keep the Friday night clear hasn't worked very well.
Yeah, so that was another lie then, because he said that he would try. That's what I think I remember saying. I would try not to work on Friday. No, he was very categorical about it. He actually said, I never work beyond 6 o'clock on a Friday night. That was what he said. I'm not going to do it, no matter what. And now he said he was just going to try to do it. It just goes on and on, doesn't it? Dan Hodges is here, commentator of the Mail on Sunday. Dan Hodges, I don't know what to say to you. Because, you know, I've literally lost any kind of semblance of sense after yesterday. I said to somebody last night, I said, I never thought I'd be actually planning to do a show tomorrow morning talking about the Chancellor of the Exchequer blowing up the markets because she burst into tears while Keir Starmer was delivering his Prime Minister's questions. And then it turns out he's just admitted to Chris Evans that he didn't even know she was crying.
You know, I've been working in politics for over 30 years and I've just never seen anything like I saw yesterday. No. You know, I mean, this is just quite just quite incredible. I mean, and there's a sense of sort of disbelief,
totally,
just still going on this morning. People are still trying to get to grips with it. But just on what you said there, this is what I do not understand. So yesterday, I was speaking to some Tory MPs who were in the chamber relatively early for PMQs.
Right.
And Rachel Reeves came into PMQs relatively early. This is when she had the first conversation, argument, if you like, with Lindsay, which obviously has some bearing on what happened. And Tory MPs were so concerned about how she appeared then. I was told this is like 15 minutes before PMQ started, that they contacted their own whips and said, there is an issue here. Rachel Reeves is in the chamber and she is in tears.
Right.
And we don't know what to do. We don't know how to react. Should we be picking up on it? Firstly, they were disturbed on a human level.
Yeah, right.
Didn't know how to react. They didn't know, should they be pointing it out? Was it, that was the Tories. So how did the Prime Minister not know that there was an issue with his own Chancellor?
Well, I just don't believe it. It's not credible, is it?
It's just, I find the whole thing absolutely incredible. I mean, I did speak to members of the government yesterday who were on the front bench, who were sitting a little bit of a way along from Rachel Reeves, who genuinely said, I genuinely didn't know what was going on, because their focus is, in front and the opposite numbers. But that side of it, I just find incomprehensible, and that's before you get on to the broader issues.
Exactly. I mean, there's definitely footage that I've seen of people behind Rachel Reeves, sort of patting her on the shoulder at one point, and appearing to give her something, which I think is chewing gum. There are clearly people there who know that she's upset. And he gave an interview last night, Starmer, to Nick Robinson, which I don't know if you saw on the news at 10, in which he said, we are so close, we're practically in lockstep with each other, we're practically, like Tweedledum and Tweedledee, we're never apart, our policies match together, we're behind each other all the time, we support each other. If you're that close to somebody, whether it's a work colleague or a friend, and he claims it's both, surely you would know that she's got some kind of personal issue going on, and you would say to her, maybe you should sit this one out and just don't worry about coming into the chamber.
But exactly, but as I've said in my article this morning, there is a big debate going on. There was a big debate going on in Westminster. There will continue to be a big debate to find out, sort of in inverted commas, what was the real reason Rachel Reeves was crying.
Yes.
If it's a personal issue, what was the personal issue? If it wasn't a personal issue, what were the politics, or what were the issues behind all that? I mean, there is absolutely no doubt, and I have had it confirmed by multiple sources, as have other journalists, that she did say to Lindsay Hoyle, I'm under so much pressure, and was that the basic root cause? But frankly, it doesn't matter, because, I mean, you've just explained how Keir Starmer says how close he is to Rachel Reeves. He has a duty of care to her.
Yeah.
Now, she was, whatever the issue is, it had such an effect on her well-being that yesterday she sat in the House of Commons chamber in front of the entire political establishment, and she, as she was well aware, in front of the entire country.
Well, and the world, really.
She wept openly. Now, this is not a moment where you go, oh, yeah, just one of those things, and everybody just carries on. He's got a duty of care to her, and he's also, some would argue more importantly, he's got a duty to the country. Yeah. Which is, we all know these are incredibly, intolerably stressful jobs. You simply cannot have a Chancellor sitting on the government front bench in tears and then have the ensuing chaos we had yesterday, where Downing Street doesn't know what the hell was going on.
Put out a tweet, didn't they, of Starmer, and boasting about how great he had done at PMQs, which they then deleted when they realised that she was in the background weeping.
They had no idea what was going on. Downing Street advisors, after PMQs, were having to refer journalists to Rachel Reeves' own staff, because Downing Street, still at that point, had no idea what was occurring. Rachel Reeves' own team, for the best part of an hour, quite clearly had no idea what was going on themselves. No. And in that vacuum, obviously, mayhem ensued, and the rumours were going round.
Right.
There were two rumours going around. One that he'd sacked her. The other was that she resigned. As a result of which, chaos then ensued on the financial markets.
Yeah.
You cannot run a country like this.
No, absolutely
It's
right. It is absolutely insane. And she walked out, I understand, of the chamber hand in hand with her sister, Ellie, who's also a big wig in the Labour Party, in the Labour government. So, it's not as if she's doing all of this stuff out of context, or that, it's in secret. It's all out in the open. She's literally wearing her heart on her sleeve. Whatever it is that's ailing her, she's doing it all in public, which seems bizarre.
But obviously, as I say, that was obviously a moment of whatever the issue is, it was a moment of significant trauma and upset for Rachel Reeves, unprecedented in modern British politics. We've never seen anything like that before. Is she at work today?
Well, another
going to be at work for the rest. What is she? Is she just? What do we do? Is everybody just going to carry on?
Yeah. Well, I asked Wes Streeting. I started my talks with Wes Streeting. The first time he's ever been on my show, which I also found quite interesting. I don't know why they've suddenly decided to do that. But I said, "Is she all right?" was my first question to him, and to which he said, "She's a great woman. She will bounce back." And I don't know what she's bouncing back from.
That's fine, and obviously there are significant issues. She, in my view, needs to be given the time and the space and the opportunity to do just that, to bounce back.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, as I say, Keir Starmer has a duty of care to her, and he has a duty of care to the country. So it seems to me self-evident that at least for the short term, Rachel Reeves needs to be removed from the pressure of that role and given the space to deal with whatever issues she has. And then once that's done, once they are dealt with, and if they are sufficiently dealt with, then there is nothing to prevent her returning to the front line of politics. But as I said, this situation where everybody is suddenly expected to go around now this morning pretending the unbelievable events of yesterday didn't happen is, frankly, to me, just incredible.
Absolutely. Let me just play you, because we played that clip of Starmer saying what he thought he said last year about not working on Friday nights. Here's what he actually said in the original interview last year.
On a Friday, I've been doing this for years, I will not do a work-related thing after 6 o'clock. Pretty well come what may.
Yeah, I will not. That's not what he said. So today, again, he's rewriting history again. He goes, I'm pretty sure I said I will try not to work on Friday night. He said, I will not work on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that round. I remember saying at the time, look, this is just silly, because whether he likes it or not, he's Prime Minister, so he's going to have to work on Friday night.
Yeah, but this is typical of Starmer, though, so he pretends that he said something different, so it doesn't sound like he's contradicting himself.
But the thing I found most bizarre, actually, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't hear the whole interview, but I heard some of it, and obviously the clip you played, which was his happy, cheery, slightly weirdly upbeat demeanour.
Yeah.
The issue today, the issue that people are asking in politics today is this. We were told that when Labour were elected, the grown-ups would be back in charge.
Yes.
And that serious people were now running the country. Now, I don't think anybody can objectively look at what's happened over the last 12 months, over the last week, and over the last 24 hours, and seriously argue that we currently have sensible people running the country. Right, Keir Starmer is literally unable to get through his flagship welfare reforms. We've got a situation where his Chancellor is in tears, as a result of which there was chaos on the financial markets. We've got a Chancellor who admitted he delivers speeches on major issues like immigration, doesn't really bother to read the speeches himself, doesn't really agree with what's being said. We've got a Prime Minister who openly admitted, yeah, I was dealing with NATO stuff, so I wasn't really giving my proper attention to the welfare bill.
Yeah.
This is what grown-up government looks like. This is what serious people look like. And the problem is, it's not going to get, none of this is going to get better. It's only going to get worse. Because the thing underpinning everything, Mel Strider is absolutely right when on the programme, underpinning everything is this. As a result of the chaos that we've had, in the budget, Rachel Reeves is going to have to raise taxes. Rachel Reeves is on camera, on record, saying she will not raise taxes. She's on record saying, saying to the CBI, I will not come back for more tax rises. I will not come back for more borrowing. The public sector, the state is going to have to live within its means. And in a couple of months' time, she is going to have to break that pledge. And as soon as she breaks that pledge, what is left of her credibility is gone. What is left of Keir Starmer's credibility is gone. And what is left of the government's credibility is gone. That is the political reality we're facing. And
there's no escaping it. There is no other route.
There is no escaping that.
I don't know what happens. I mean, do you think she's out before that, though? Now, because of what happened yesterday?
No, I mean, she should be. But even before yesterday, my own view was that he should move her, and he had to move her, but he wouldn't have the political courage to move her. Now, as a result of what happened yesterday, as a result of the criticism of him yesterday, of him not showing any particular care of attention, for which there's been a backlash within the Labour Party as well as publicly. Obviously, he then rushed out, even though he had multiple opportunities to actually do it in the House of Commons chamber, then rushed out belatedly. He said, oh, no, she's here to stay, she's here to stay. No, Rachel Reeves is not, in my view, going anywhere, but that will create a major, and I actually think a terminal political problem for the government when we get to the budget. Because as I say, if he had moved Rachel Reeves, had then put in place another chancellor could concede mistakes were made, could concede that when Rachel Reeves gave the pledge not to raise taxes, she was unable to fulfil that pledge. But we've got now a different chancellor, a different economic strategy. We're going down a different route. You could do all those things politically. You would take a hit for it politically, but you could construct a strategy around that.
It's a very bizarre time, I have to say.
When Rachel Reeves stands up and just says, "I lied," or taxes are going up, it will make all this stuff, the tears and everything else, look like just a kid's
park. I know. It's quite incredible. Anyway, listen, Dan, we've got to go. We can talk about it for about 2 more hours, I think. But thank you very much indeed. Have a good weekend. Dan Hodges, commentator at Mail on Sunday. A bit of sad breaking news for you. Liverpool star Diogo Jota, at 28 years of age, has died in a car crash, apparently 2 weeks after his wedding day, according to local reports in Spain. He was driving between Spain and Portugal, apparently. That's a shocking story. We'll bring you more on that as we know it. Let's get a voice note from James.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn. Yeah, just about Rachel. Yeah, I think you know my opinion on Rachel. I'm not going to feel that sorry for her. Lying on a CV for a start, so you're not an economist. So you shouldn't be sat where you are anyway, because you're a liar. So, yeah, she's upset. Oh, pull yourself together. Go out the room. You know, all the Be Kind people are out, aren't they? Oh, yeah, Be Kind. Yeah, the Be Kind Brigade, who aren't very kind, by the way. Yeah, no sympathy. And old Keir, yeah. I mean, just stand up, mate, and say it were a disaster. Trying to make out yesterday it had all gone to plan. What a whopper.
That's a new word. What a whopper. I think that's right. Should we have a look at how Starmer says he sleeps at night? This is what he said to Chris Evans.
Do you set an alarm or not?
Yeah.
And are you usually asleep when the alarm goes off, or?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I don't have trouble sleeping, which is a good thing. But the alarm seems to go off earlier and earlier every morning.
How does that happen? Or is that because you fix it to go off earlier and earlier, or is it just your imagination? You think it's earlier. It's because the light, the light gets lighter in the summer. I don't know. Right, Richard Tice is coming up in a little while. First, though, Elliot Keck, because there's a big Motability scandal glooming. No, never mind. On the horizon, let's put it that way. It's 9:30.
1 year on.
And it's already falling apart.
We did it! Smash the people smuggling gangs.
There is no deterrent. More and more migrants have come to Britain.
I thought Starmer would definitely last the 4 or 5 years. Now I'm thinking 2 maximum.
And it turns out that Keir Starmer had a wardrobe busier than David Beckham's.
1 explosive hour.
U-turn after U-turn.
I'm frightened about how bad they are.
Absolute incompetence and deceit.
1 year of chaos.
Only on
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:32. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock when it's time for Julie Hartley-Brewer, of course. Two-tier Keir needs to fix the foundations of Rachel Reeves' face, says CG. It was a right mess. The tears were flowing further and faster than ever seen before in Parliament. Dave says this: it will be announced that she is resigning due to personal issues. I wouldn't be surprised at all about that. I don't think she lasts until the autumn, the way things are going. Mike, great show as always, says Alan. No one likes to see a person upset, especially if it's a woman. However, for years as a male, I've had to suffer all these women telling me that they are the stronger sex, girl power, etc. To see someone as senior as the Chancellor of our government being in such an emotional state is highly worrying. When she was appointed, Starmer was ecstatic that she was the first female in that position. Remember, the first woman. It's a matter of pride, a moment of pride, I think he said. He says he seemed to overlook the fact that Tories have already had 2 female prime ministers. This useless mob have to go before they totally destroy this country. We are a laughing stock. Keep up the great work. We really are. Another scandal has fallen upon the desk, though. Elliot Kex here from Taxpayers Alliance. He's the head of campaigns. Elliot, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
You've been discovering some quite interesting stuff on the Motability front, haven't you? West Yorkshire Police, the force responsible for Leeds, Bradford, Wakefield, among other places, has seized almost 2,000 Motability vehicles in the last 6 years. So what's that all about?
Yeah, and the number has actually doubled, so it's a problem that is escalating significantly, and that has gone up by far more than the number of Motability users has gone up, although that has also increased significantly. One of the problems we have is that police forces don't actually normally record when a vehicle that has been seized is linked to Motability, but West Yorkshire unusually do, and I think this speaks to the need for Motability and police forces to get much better at tracking these cars. These are ultimately taxpayer-funded cars, and we should know if they're involved in crimes.
So is the suggestion that they've been seized because they've been involved in crimes, then?
Well, they've been seized by the police, so we don't know. Unfortunately, the police force did not provide the reason why they were seized, but if a car is being seized by the police force, it's safe to assume it's for a crime. Some other police forces that have provided us with data on the nature of the crimes include drug trafficking, they include sex with a minor, so essentially child rape, assault on a police officer, so some very serious crimes that these cars have been linked to, and we need to know more from Motability about what they do with the users of these cars, whether or not they have to pay for the car being impounded, whether or not they get a new car. So there's a lot of questions to be asked from the story.
Absolutely extraordinary stuff. And I mean, we've been following this Motability story really since months ago when it was broken that so many of the cars that are now driven around the streets of this country are Motability cars. I think it's 1 in 5, isn't it?
1 in 5 new cars, yes.
1 in 5 new cars is actually a Motability car, which is extraordinary. And also another story that came across the desk yesterday came from Guido Fawkes about the kinds of conditions that are listed by those currently on the Motability schemes, which include food intolerance, frozen shoulder, alcohol misuse, more slightly worrying, generalised anxiety, stress, depressive disorder, that's a big one, dyslexia, tennis elbow. There's 40 people driving around in cars because they've got tennis elbow. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And the Taxpayers Alliance actually released our benefits dashboard earlier this week, which broke down in detail the number, all the conditions that you can get Motability and, in fact, PIP for in general, personal independence payments. Yeah. And there's loads of others in there. There's writer's cramp, there's Tourette's, there's anxiety and depression, as we know. And some of these we've seen extraordinary increases. The number of people with sleep apnea who are getting a Motability car or eligible for a Motability car has gone from about 150 to 1,200. These are extraordinary increases and something is clearly going wrong with the system.
Yeah, so somebody who could inadvertently and just immediately fall asleep at the wheel is getting a free car.
Yeah, well, I think sleep apnea is snoring and the like. So, but I mean, certainly there are real questions about whether or not you need a free car for some of these conditions. Eczema is another one, as you said, acne, even factitious disorders, which are literally a condition where you habitually make up being ill. So you're not actually sick; you just make up that you're sick. And there are a few of those people that are actually getting a free vehicle out of it.
Yeah, right. And I mean, the biggest number is going to the people with depressive disorders. 7,460 cars. Doesn't sound like a great idea, does it?
Yeah, I mean, our number is it's actually far higher than that. The number of people with anxiety and depressive disorders is now 120,000. That's up from 20,000. Then you have
120,000.
Yeah, there's separate categories for just depressive disorders and just anxiety disorders, which are also in the tens of thousands. So the numbers are really, really shocking. It's clear that the move to online and over-the-phone assessments as opposed to in-person assessments means that a lot more people are getting these vehicles when maybe they shouldn't be. Let's be honest, you can fake being anxious and fake being depressed, particularly over the phone. You can't fake having cerebral palsy or Down syndrome, very serious conditions where I think people understandably should get help. And if that's a vehicle to help them move around, then that's, I think, entirely fair. But I think some of the conditions that people are getting these vehicles now, getting benefits now, I think we need to look again seriously about the appropriateness of that.
Yeah, absolutely extraordinary stuff. Elliot, good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Great work you're doing as well. Keep it up. Elliot Keck, Head of Campaigns at Taxpayers Alliance, who've done some fantastic work breaking down the benefits scrounger system as well. So you might want to check that out on their Twitter feed. You can see it all. Here's a voice note from Ian.
Hiya, Mike. Just had a quote to fix my van. A self-employed joiner. 771 quid. I've just paid 700 quid for a service and some repairs on it. So that's about 1,600 quid. Ugh. I might develop ADHD and a bit of anxiety. See if I can get a new one for mobility, eh? Ugh. Why do I bother, Mike?
I know. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, listening to Elliot there, I was thinking to myself, I feel a bit left out. I don't think I've got any of these disorders, we get a few disorders on board, and I realise that there'll be people out there going, oh, he's making fun of people with really serious mental health problems. No, I'm not. I'm making fun of the system which allows anyone to pretend that they've got anxiety, therefore they get a free car, or to pretend that they're suffering from something like tennis elbow, even if they're not. I mean, if you're not seeing somebody and you're diagnosing people online, how can you tell whether they've got tennis elbow or not? Eh? You ask them to, show you how far they can rotate their elbow or their cuff, perhaps. What do you do? How can you prove somebody hasn't got it if you're not even meeting them? It's ridiculous, isn't it? Anyway, it's 9:39. Richard Tice coming next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:41. We're here, of course, all the way through till 10 o'clock when Julie Hartman-Grove will be here. How about a new name for Keir Starmer? Tier Starmer, says this one. Neil says, when you were talking to Wes Streeting, it wasn't clear whether patient cancellations are included in the reduction of the waiting list. This would account for nearly 25% based on previous years. Well, I think he said that he was not including cancellations as appointments. But my point to him would be that if you're making millions and millions of appointments and those are not being fulfilled, then you're still counting them as appointments. Once they've been cancelled, maybe you don't count them, but you certainly count them when you make them. So therefore you could say, so for example, I made 1 million appointments last month. None of them actually may have taken place, but you made the appointments, and that means that's how you count 1 million. It's easily done. It's obviously how they work the Treasury figures out as well. How much have you done? How much have you counted? About 100 billion. That's fine. No problem. Richard Tice is here, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Richard, a very good morning to you.
Well, good morning. I'm just reeling, actually, from the news on your breaking news there about Diego Jota from Liverpool
story.
Passing away. It's absolutely shocking.
I know.
So sad.
Really sad. 2 weeks after his wedding.
But he's one of the great stars of the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely shocking. It's really, really tragic. We'll obviously get more detail on that as we go through. Just before we talk about one of the most bizarre things ever, I think that's ever happened in the Parliament that I've seen, certainly in my time of covering it. This is Keir Starmer, literally just about an hour or so ago, talking to Chris Evans. He said he didn't even know that she was crying. Check this out.
I actually personally didn't even appreciate it was happening in the chamber because I came in and I've got questions being fired at me in PMQs, and so I'm sort of constantly up at the dispatch box and down. But I think we just need to be clear. It's a personal matter, and I'm not going to breach Rachel's privacy by going into what's a personal matter for her.
Now, speaking of Dan Hodges a little while ago, Richard, he said to me, it was very clear because Conservative MPs, I don't know if you were there early yesterday, but Conservative MPs had noticed that she was crying very early on when she came in, much before Starmer even entered the chamber. So he's sitting next to the woman. How can he not see that she's upset?
It's hard to know. I mean, obviously a Prime Minister is going to be very focused on the questions about to be launched at him, but it was clear to all of us sitting opposite that she was at best very, very glum stroke gloomy just by her posture, and then those who were sort of a little bit closer could see that actually she was basically in considerable distress and tears. And but it was funny actually, someone said, just right next to me, said it may well be a personal matter. As it was happening, and look, maybe that's the case, but I don't know. I think the stories coming out about a row with the Speaker, about a row with the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, who was just sort of sitting there, completely sort of impervious. I mean, you would have thought Angela Rayner actually would have noticed and would have looked across with some empathy and sympathy, but not at all. So. I suspect there's been a series of massive rows in the Labour government because, let's not forget, just the night before, they introduced a bill that was designed to save £5 billion, and 2 hours later, it came out of the chamber, and it was going to cost probably £1 billion. So it's not surprising she might be a bit upset, frankly. I mean, her whole economic strategy is torn up to shreds. And I think, as she will realise, and others will now realise, you've got a Labour government that's basically a puppet to the hard left socialists who just want to spend whatever they can.
Well, I would have described it as, officially the wheels literally coming off the government. It no longer has any function. I mean, I think on the night itself, it was described as a government without any authority, without any sort of means of winning an argument, and without any ability to in future, kind of shape the way that they want to run the country. Because at every move that Keir Starmer now wants to make, he could be blocked.
And essentially, that's the key point, that they're never going to be able to control public spending, and that's why the bond markets reacted so violently during PMQs yesterday as the penny started to drop about the impact of all of this. And I think we're facing a government that is essentially completely in hock to the hard left, the spendthrift, and it'll mean more tax rises, and it'll mean ever higher cost of government debt, and we're into a vicious spiral, and at some point it breaks and we get into a very, very bad debt crisis. You never quite know what triggers it, but yesterday was a significant move towards it, I regret to say.
I don't think there's any question about that. There's a great piece in The Sun today on page 12. I don't know whether you've had a chance to read it, Richard, but I would recommend it highly to you. The headline says, "A year on, it seems that the biggest job in Britain is simply too big for him." You might know the author of that. It's actually me.
I've not yet got to it, but I'm looking forward to it. And
but the point
I imagine that it's a page of wisdom.
Yeah, it really is. Common sense, you might say.
Obviously, you were talking earlier about Motability. I think I qualify for 2 cars because I might have tennis elbow and I might get anxiety when I'm interviewed by you. Does that get me 2 cars or what?
I think it gets you 2, yeah. Absolutely right. But isn't it incredible, though? I mean, just off to the side there, that they've seized all these cars in Yorkshire, which have obviously been involved in crime. Hundreds of them. It's incredible. But, back to Starmer, it's a year anniversary tomorrow. It seems like it's an awful lot longer, doesn't it? And nothing really has worked. And as I say in that piece, the job is clearly too big for him. He can't do it. He's admitted in an interview last weekend that he was distracted from knowing that the welfare bill was about to fall to pieces before his very eyes because he was at an international summit in the Netherlands with NATO and at the G7 in Canada. He also forgot to read his speech in which he said that we were becoming a land of strangers because he was distracted by somebody firebombing his house. And you just think to yourself, what's going on?
Well, it's a man who clearly cannot multitask. He clearly cannot show and understand any form of empathy. And a man who's got no natural feel for politics, for the approach to it, and understanding actually what the British people want and feel about things. Yeah. And so he's now just become the captain of U-turns.
Right.
We've had the U-turn, obviously, on the winter fuel allowance. We've had the U-turn on the grooming gangs inquiry. U-turn after U-turn. I was bobbing up and down yesterday in PMQs. I wanted to ask him if he was going to U-turn on his smash the gangs policy because the numbers are up 48% in the first 6 months of this year alone. Some 44,000 have come across since he became Prime Minister. That's about the capacity of Stamford Bridge Football Stadium.
Yeah.
By this time next year, the numbers will have filled Wembley Stadium of young men of military age, many of whom have criminal intent of a variety of degrees. And I just I don't see how the British people, frankly, are going to put up with this much longer. But this is a Prime Minister that has lost all credibility. And he's in serious trouble. The Chancellor's in serious trouble. The Labour government's in serious trouble. The consequence of that is that the British people, regrettably, are going to feel the significant pain from that trouble.
And also, a thing or two about the business world. I mean, markets jittery, very jittery yesterday. Gilts up again at one point. Apparently, the cashing in was actually as bad as it was during Liz Truss's 2022 mini budget. Presumably, I haven't looked at them today, but the markets will be jittery for the rest of time until everybody works out what's happening with Rachel Reeves. Because is she staying? Is she going? If she does go, who on earth is going to do the job? Because they haven't got anybody who's qualified.
They will be jittery for a very long time because of this point about the ability to control public spending and the fact that, in a sense, 50 to 70 Labour MPs have now taken control of the government and they just want to spend as much money as possible. And it's devastating in that sense. Meanwhile, I sit there in the chamber as, for example, a major oil refinery goes bust at the beginning of the week.
Yeah.
And you've got people like the Green Party standing up saying, I stand in solidarity with the workers. The workers have lost their jobs because of the ludicrous Green Party eco-zealot style net stupid zero policies. I mean, the hypocrisy of these people. Likewise, from the Labour benches. I mean, I just had to give my head a shake and and try and make some sense of it all.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is the problem. I had a Green MP on the other day who was telling me about the way out of all of this financial difficulty we've got is a wealth tax. And when I pointed out to her that it doesn't work and has never worked anywhere else, she accused me of being condescending and in some ways patronising.
People are fleeing the country every day, and I'm hearing more and more Labour MPs and Green MPs and all sorts of strange colour MPs of political persuasion asking for a wealth tax. And I think we could well see more of that talk. And if that happens, or people get that sense, then ever more people will continue to flee the country.
Well, what's even more troubling,
whatsoever.
Richard, is what I discovered this week. We've had so many people get in touch with us to say that either their children are leaving the country to make their fortunes elsewhere, or that they're coming close to retirement, they're thinking of leaving. So it's not even just, the fairly wealthy people, the millionaires that are going. It's actually ordinary working class people who've maybe got a bit of a retirement nest egg, or who can move abroad because they can run a business from somewhere else other than Britain. And it's a massive brain drain. It's a massive cash drain as well, because we're going to end up with more people on benefits than there are paying taxes.
It's a really, really dangerous situation. We're sort of on a cliff edge, and once you go over the cliff, then it's downhill, and it can be a very long, steep downhill spiral. But the good news is that there is now essentially no more than 4 years to go to the general election. We should, by the end of this week, it'll be less than 4 years. So I think we should start trying to have a bit of optimism, counting the days down, counting the weeks down, counting the months down towards a reform government that can rescue the United Kingdom.
Yeah. Well, I think you better get ready to do it a bit sooner than that, because I'm going to be chasing these people out of power quicker. I can't wait 4 years, I'm afraid. I'm too old. It's going to happen sooner than that. I'll let you know. Richard Tice, very good to see you. Thank you very much indeed, Deputy Leader of Reform. Amazing show today. Fantastic. Some fantastic messages. I haven't read them all out, I apologise, but here's another two. Steve from Sussex. Mike, so illegals moved from hotels to council or private rentals. Who's going to pay the rent? How will this make any difference? There will still be thousands and thousands of illegal immigrants in this country, and we will be paying the bill. So nothing changes except the number of rentals available to British people are reduced. More smoke and mirrors. Absolutely right. This is Talk.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel.
Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 10 o'clock, just about 3 minutes away. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here very shortly to tell us what's coming up on her show. A little bit earlier in the show, if you missed it, I spoke to Wes Streeting, the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. Here's what he had to say. I've got to kick off, really, and ask you about Rachel Reeves. Is she all right?
She is, and she'll bounce back. I think there will be lots of people watching this morning who will think of times where something's been going on in their life, and when you go off to work, you don't just leave your problems at the door. And what makes us different as politicians is that often we're not only at work, we're on show, and that's what you saw yesterday. But that she is tough, she will bounce back. And it's because of Rachel's leadership as Chancellor. We've seen interest rates fall 4 times. Wages are finally rising faster than the cost of living. And also we've got the fastest growing economy in the G7. So lots done, lots more to do. For the avoidance of any doubt, Rachel Reeves is here to stay and she'll be Chancellor for many years to come.
Just one final question on Rachel Reeves. Do you know what Rachel Reeves is upset about?
No, I know it's personal and it's nothing to do with work, and you know, I take Rachel at face value, and I do think that you know, we're in public life, but we are also entitled to a private life, and there are reasons why we will not always want to talk about what's going on in our lives outside of work, and I think we're entitled to that privacy.
Yes, no, I don't disagree with that, but several people are telling different stories. You know, there's one suggestion that she had an argument with Lindsay Hoyle just shortly before Prime Minister's questions, and she had another argument with Angela Rayner over the welfare bill. So there is some professional kind of crossover, isn't there?
Yeah, it is categorically untrue to say that Rachel had a row with the Deputy Prime Minister before Prime Minister's questions, or at one point there was speculation that she'd had a row with the Prime Minister. They hadn't actually had a meeting that morning before Prime Minister's questions. So, you know, let's ignore the tittle-tattle. Rachel's team have been very clear. It's personal, nothing to do with work. That's what we saw yesterday, and she will bounce back. She's a friend as well as a colleague, and she will bounce back.
Julie Hartley-Brewer here. Very good morning to you.
Not an ounce of sympathy. We were watching it live on the show yesterday, and it was then we spoke afterwards. Oh, there was a tear. I'm sorry. She plays this Faust woman Chancellor.